Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode or another spine number of Chasing Labels. This is episode or spine number 191, and we are back here once again. If you haven't joined us before, welcome. If you have joined us before, welcome back. I am your host, Andrew Cabral, and this is the podcast YouTube channel series of videos all about movies, movie collecting particularly, and and in this episode here, we'll be talking about a bunch of the recent announcements in the world of boutique label home video for the last 2 weeks or so. That's what we do. We take the last 2 weeks, we look and see what's been announced, and we discuss them. We talk about the special features, we talk about the movies, if indeed we have seen them. Now, it's not everything. It's not everything. You can't cover everything. It's mostly things that I'm interested in personally, interested in adding to my collection, hopefully soon. I'm notorious for waiting and waiting and waiting, and some of these are limited editions. And therefore, the longer you wait, chances are they may sell out. But I am joined here by another special guest this week. Recently, we had some special guests here joining me, and we have another one here, and that is Suzanne. Suzanne, welcome. Let me fix this here. Yeah, there you are. Hello.
Hi, everyone.
Suzanne is joining us here from Australia. We have a bit of an Australian theme going on for the last several episodes or so. Last time we had our friend Paul Berryman on. Next, in about 2 weeks' time, on June 2nd, we will have our friend Tony Miches, who has been here on the various episodes and things going on here on Chasing Labels in the past. And now we have Suzanne. Please introduce yourself, Suzanne, and tell us all about what makes you you and your love of movies.
Hello, I'm Suzanne Boleyn. Thank you for having me on the show, and hello to everyone. We are here because we have a problem. not really. Yes, we're collectors, and we love movies and physical media, as do I. So I guess my love of film goes right back to childhood, watching films with my parents. And that never really ended. I just like seeking out new films, strange things. I always like seeing something new. And that has extended to my movie collecting. My background is in art. So I have degrees in art, history, and photography, and the history of photography. And that kind of translates to film. I love history. So I started getting into doing some special features for releases, which has been an absolute honor and incredible to work on some films that I really love. So the first thing I ever did was for Via Vision, and that is this beautiful film, Welcome Home, Roxy Carmichael, with Winona Ryder. So quite an underrated film. And some of the guys at Via Vision knew that I was a really, really big fan of this film. So it's directed by Jim Abrams, who, of course, did Airplane, I believe it's called in America. Here in Australia, it was called Flying High. He's mainly known for comedies, but this is a very beautiful coming-of-age story about a girl that's a real misfit, which if you've ever felt like a misfit, or like you haven't fitted in, or a bit of a nerd or a weird kid, this is totally for you. And it's a gorgeous production. I absolutely love it. So I was absolutely honored to get to do the video essay for this release. And I talk about teenage girls, so the history of teenage girls in young adult fiction and in coming of age film, and also a lot about the film. So that was one I did. Another one I did recently was The Radiance, Daughters of Darkness. Yep, so I have an essay there in that booklet, in that special edition, which I believe is still available. It has an amazing book in it with heaps of photos. I love my vampires. I love my horror, as you can see. You can probably tell. Love my gothic, love my horror. So that was incredible. I talk about the symbolism in this film and how this film references art, because it really does. It's a really interesting film with lots of hidden stuff in it. apart from all the lesbian vampires. But yeah, that's one I did. I've done things for New Wave, like Rubber's Lover. That was a thrill doing that new Australian label. That my friend is responsible for bringing these extreme Japanese releases to us. So yeah, that was great doing that. It's a really crazy, extreme Japanese cyberpunk horror, body horror, disgusting, gross out, assault on the senses. So I talk a bit about when it was made, Shozen Fukui, the filmmaker's links to industrial music and kind of extreme subculture in the 90s, like industrial music, body modification, rubber, all those good things. So that was great. And I also did for New Wave, Strange Circus, Sion Sono there. And that's quite a confronting film. So I talk about the themes and symbols in that. So that's just a few things that I've done, and I love them all. So absolute thrill. I did I Spit on Your Grave for Umbrella, the special edition. I have an essay in there, and I don't have it here, sorry. But that was incredible, being able to talk about such a serious topic. And I write about consent and the symbolism of rape in classical mythology and in the history of film, etc., and kind of where that comes from. So that was really amazing, being able to write about such a serious topical thing. So there you go. That's a brief introduction to me. Is there anything else you'd like to know?
That was quite concise and quite accurate representative of all of the movies you discussed, I would also say as well. For anybody who hasn't seen any of those films that Suzanne has worked on, they are certainly for a specific crowd of film fan, I guess. Yeah, it's fascinating, just the types of films that you've worked on and stuff like that. And specifically, I Spit on Your Grave is one of the most, controversial, I guess would be a term that would be used. And I know recently Umbrella had put out, and it was not only that film, but it was its sequel as well, which came out like many decades later, completely different context in terms of that subgenre, the way it was treated back in the 1970s versus when the sequel was made. And there's been several remakes as well, and sequels to remakes too. That's
so the remakes. The remakes were kind of an offshoot, and they're quite good. People like them. The most recent remake that is included on this disc that has Camille Keaton in it, it carries on years after the original film. So instead of being a reboot or anything like that, it actually is in that timeline, basically, with Camille Keaton back in it. And it's a project of love from the director. It's a very DIY kind of project. It's very interesting that he revisited this and felt that he wanted to revisit this. And there's some interesting things in it, like how Camille's character has coped with this trauma over the years and things like that. But yeah, as I said, massively controversial film, but I think a real privilege to be able to write about such a serious topical thing as consent.
Indeed.
Because
have you that's very interesting. I know fellow, I believe, Australian Alexandra Helen Nicholas wrote a whole book on that genre.
And
about how because that subgenre has been part of the horror subgenre for decades upon decades, all the way up to today, which is fascinating, because the way in which times have changed when you're talking about things like consent and depicting violence against women on film and things like that. People are a lot more, I would say, sensitive to that now, or at least a lot more aware of it, and there's more open discussions about it as time has gone on.
So there was an interesting change, I think, when a lot of these films came out, and exploitation films, and even say Brian De Palma films, which we've talked about quite a lot on Imprint Cast, which I also do. for the imprint label with those guys. But so the kind of earlier waves of feminists really hated these kinds of films, and I can understand why. I can understand the things depicted are very disturbing, but there was a move, I think, and I think Alexandra Helen Nicholas definitely goes into this in her books and lots of, her extras and things, is that by, say, people our age, more like the Gen X and older millennials, we started to look at things in a new way. And it's interesting that this particular genre of the I Spit on Your Grave, rape, revenge, that kind of thing, like, yes, it's abhorrent, but actually a lot of the fandom is coming from women. And I think what is behind that, which I do talk about in the essay, is that I think in real life there's a sense that there's not much justice. So we see it in everyday life. We see people getting away with horrible crimes, or we see things and we think that's not fair. I mean, life is not fair. So these films trigger this kind of, I think, visceral response of, a need for justice and like a satisfaction in witnessing some kind of extreme justice. But so that's an interesting thing.
A lot of catharsis in those things, a lot of cathartic things for people watching, who perhaps have gone through, like you said, the trauma that is being depicted on screen, and can have a very personal tie to these films. Just going into some of the comments here, we do have some people here in the comments. Our good viewer JB44 is here. Greetings. Let's chase. I've been trying to call the people who are fans of Chasing Labels chasers for years, and it's kind of caught on a little bit, but JB's kind of the only one really, carrying that torch. Our good friend Josephine DeMarco is here. Hello, Ryan. Hello, Suzanne. Let's see. Paul, who was here last time. Hi, Paul. Good to see you again. He says hi, Suzanne, Paul, as well. And let's see. Speaking of which, Tony is here. Hi, Tony. Tony pops in. So he's like, I think he said another. Oh yeah, here we go. Another Imprint cast member is here. So yes, you are a member of the Imprint cast, which is the podcast about the Imprint releases. Coincidentally, you just missed like the massive amounts of announcements they've had from Imprint over the last month or so. Just
that's continuous
ironic flow. In the previous episode, we talked about their Imprint Asia line, which they dropped a couple of editions from. And then recently, it was just like every couple of days, there would be just a list of Imprint things coming out. Just a consistent flow. They put out so many. They put out hundreds of titles since we started Chasing Labels about 5 years ago. And it's tough to keep up. It's tough to keep up.
It's a deluge of discs.
Indeed. I have some all around me. It's so many. I mean, you can't really. It's tough to cover them all with any amount of in-depthness, but you just do what you can. JB says, I bought the Daughters of Darkness. Yeah, that Daughters of Darkness release that Suzanne held up, that's the one from Radiance. Coincidentally, we'll be talking about Radiance. That is a super deluxe edition from them. That movie is certainly a staple of the vampire genre, and really a cult film as well. I watched it for the first time to talk about that release and was just taken aback by how good the movie still is, and this feeling of 1970s horror has such an ambiance to it that some movies get right better than others, and I feel like that movie does get it right. But let's see. Tony talks about your video essay from King David from Imprint was great.
Yeah, I forgot about that one. I got to indulge my great love of epic and biblical films for that one. So that's just a very brief history of biblical film on screen.
Oh, nice.
So,
that is such a subgenre that still exists, but it's nowhere near the level of popularity that it was decades upon decades ago. The biblical epic. Really, I feel like the widescreen format, I think, was made for biblical epics, specifically back in the 50s. It feels like that's what it was intended for. I think The Robe was one of the first widescreen movies ever, and that was a biblical epic. Of course, we've had like the Ten Commandments and Ben-Hur, which recently celebrated an anniversary release. Um, oh yeah, the biblical epic. I feel like epics in general feel like they make a comeback every couple of decades. I
Yeah.
don't know how you feel about that. I feel like the 2000s there was an epic, a return to the epic on the big
Yeah,
screen.
talk about that a bit in the video essay, like why this genre was popular at certain points in history. Definitely in the 50s, well, even, 50s, 60s, these very big productions were hoping to compete with television.
Yes.
So people could, instead of going to the theatre for a couple of hours or an hour to see some entertainment, they were getting it at home basically. So I think it was a push from the studios to make these very big, colourful, epic, sexy, star-filled productions that people would really want to go out and go to the cinema for. And obviously that's something that film is still struggling with more than ever today. So
It's amazing that you say that because I think for those of you who are, I guess, in the know or people who just follow the movie world in general, is the the box office of people going to the movie theater is struggling once again. It's like the 50s are back, and now they have to come up with new ideas to get people to go to the movie theater with like all kinds of different formats that they're working with, like the Dolby big screen or the IMAX or something else, or they have like 4D where it's like an amusement park ride now, and they'll splash water on you and your seats will rattle and stuff like that. And it's like it's interesting the history of movie how cyclical things are. Like things go in and out of style. I always think of 3D. For me, 3D is fascinating because it comes in and out of style every couple of decades as the technology goes and whatnot. But yeah, it is fascinating how back in the 50s they already needed to figure out new ways to get people in the movie theater to make money, and how we still need it today. Uh, but yeah, let's get over to what we do here on Chasing Labels. Let's go over to the announcements that have happened over the last 2 weeks or so. Before we do that, some things that have been happening on Chasing Labels recently. Recently we did. We've done several things. Oh, recently we had a tribute video that we did to the late great Tony Stella, whose work you've probably seen on many of cover arts all across various companies, Eureka, Arrow, uh, yeah, so many of them. We recently did a tribute video to him there. That's up on the channel. We have our episodes of the Unwatched Pile. We're going to have another episode of the Unwatched Pile coming up. Not this coming weekend, but the following weekend. We will actually. I should probably check my calendar on that. I see. The good thing I write these things down, or else I would never remember them at all. Yeah. So the 23rd, we will have an Unwatched Pile episode. So far, I picked my movie is going to be Pale Rider, the Clint Eastwood western from 1985, which I have never seen before. And then after
good
that, we
one.
will be doing the episode of Movies Down Memory Lane will be the 29th. And check out all that stuff we've been going on here on the channel as well. We did Criterion release announcements. We did Criterion reviews recently, Sentimental Value, as well as Akira Kurosawa's Stray Dog that's recently got 4K releases. I initially was going to talk about the Criterion announcements that came out today, but I think I'm going to push that for a separate video later on because they came out around noon today. Didn't have enough time to really get into them myself and watch some of the movies, so I figured I would do it properly like we usually do here on Chasing Labels. And so that will be later on this week. So now let's get into the announcements. Let me add the screenshot here and let me go over to Suzanne. Where would you like to start? I believe you specifically.
I'll just follow you.
Okay, follow me. Okay. I know, Suzanne, you originally wanted to. Yeah, just go down the notes list that both Suzanne and I have. We will go over to Radiance, actually. That seems like a good place to start since we already talked about Daughters of Darkness. Let's transition over to Radiance, which happens to be my first tab up as well.
Here we go.
Here we go. So hopefully all of you can see it. And so let's talk initially about the hotspot, because this is a re-release from Radiance, and they don't do many re-releases unless they're standard editions. But this is a re-release going from the Blu-ray to the 4K, which is kind of great because this is a Dennis Hopper film. Now, Suzanne, I know you've seen the movie, so I will let I'll let you talk about it because I've already talked about it here once upon a time. So, what did you think of the movie The Hotspot?
I love this movie. I love it. I love Dennis Hopper.
Mm,
Um, and I mean, this has those kind of traits that Dennis Hopper brings into film, the classic, the Americana. But I rewatched this film for, to prepare for this, which was just a pleasure anyway. And it's like a great old school Hollywood film. So it came out around 1990, I think. It, of course, has big stars. So Jennifer Connelly, who people absolutely adore, and she was and is still a huge star. It's got Virgin Madsen, who, of course, was from Candyman. She's the kind of blonde bombshell. It's a neo-noir
mhm.
thriller, but it also fits into that very 90s erotic thriller thing that was going on
Yeah.
at the time, because it is sexy, it is hot, and I'm not just talking hot like the people are hot or the situations. It's like you look at the film and it actually creates an ambience. It's sweaty, it's searing. um, Something I think that we miss in a lot of modern contemporary film, this kind of atmosphere building where you get a sense of the environment just from the picture, what it smells like, what it feels like. And to me, this film is that. It's like you can smell it, you can feel it, you can see the sweat. There's like fans going, there's that ambient clicking of fans and air conditioners. And yeah, and also I guess it fits in as well. The 90s had that real Americana road movie outlaw thing happening as well. Like, I don't know, True Romance, Natural Born Killers, Thelma and Louise. And I think this fits in with them as well. But this is very kind of old Hollywood as well, while being really modern. So I could rave about this film. I absolutely love it. It's wildly entertaining as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with everything you just said. For those of you who have not seen this movie, The Hotspot, it is available here in the U.S. and Region A land from Kino. They put out a Blu-ray a couple of years ago. Radiance has had their Blu-ray out. Now it's getting a 4K upgrade. And uh, Suzanne is right. The atmosphere in this movie has this grittiness. It's like this backwater, dusty town, if you will. It's got that almost like an old school Western vibe to it, meeting the elements of the 90s neo noir. Like you said, there's something interesting about the 90s neo noir erotic thriller type of thing where you can feel the energy coming off the screen. You can feel the tension between the characters. A lot of it is sexual tension between the characters. In this movie here, our main character is portrayed by Don Johnson, who I think people will particularly know him for Miami Vice in the 80s. I think he's predominantly known as like a television actor, but him seeing him on screen and his chemistry between Virginia Madsen as well as Jennifer Connelly. Then there's a tension between him and the rest of the people in the town because he is a drifter. It's the classic outsider story of this guy coming to town and people automatically not trusting him because he is an outsider. I'm thinking of The Fugitive Kind, the movie with Marlon Brando, where immediately people don't like him. So this movie plays on a lot of that stuff. There's also a heist element to the film as well. It's pulpy. It's really great. If you've not seen this movie, also super underrated, I have to say. Dennis Hopper as a director, I think, is so
Mm.
underrated. Uh, he he was directing, oh goodness, since the 60s. He directed Easy Rider. I believe that's Dennis Hopper. And then in the 70s, he did some directing as well. He did the movie Out of the Blue, which I think is fantastic. Um, uh, uh, Severin put that out on Blu-ray and 4K a couple of years ago. That movie is excellent. That's that song, Out of the Blue, where that comes from. But that movie is phenomenal, and a lot of the other movies that um, Dennis Hopper directed, I thought were really good as well. I'm becoming more of an appreciation of him as a director as well as an actor. Of course, people know him, I think, for his work. Blue Velvet is one for me. There's this movie called River's Edge, which he is also in from the '80s, which I think he's really great in, kind of playing a similar type of madman character that we knew Dennis Hopper to be on screen. Um, yeah, he was in the movie, An American Friend, which is the Wim Wenders film from the '70s, which he's really, really good in. Of course, he was in Apocalypse Now. He's in the third act of Apocalypse Now as this kind of crazy photographer in the jungle. But yeah, I really like this movie so much. There's a long description here of the description of the movie, which I'll read rather quickly. Harry, a drifter, portrayed by Don Johnson, rolls into town and takes it and talks his way into a job at a used car dealership, where he's caught between two beautiful women: the boss's conniving wife, Dolly, portrayed by Virginia Madsen, and Gloria, who's Jennifer Connelly, who they referenced that she was in Requiem for a Dream, but Jennifer Connelly has been in so many movies, so many movies. A naive young accountant whose life is complicated by blackmail. When Harry plans to rob the local bank, he becomes enmeshed in a lethal web of lust, greed, and extortion. That's a lot of '90s neo noir vibes there. If I ever did see it, Hell Hath No Fury. Let's see. Oh, it's based off Hell Hath No Fury by Charles Williams. A hotspot is a dusty, sweaty modern noir that updates their pulp formula of twists and turns with no intensity with an intensity to match director Dennis Hopper's early film roles. And for special features, 4K restoration from the original camera negative, presented in HDR/Dolby Vision. There's a 4K disc and I guess the subsequent Blu-ray disc. So the Blu-ray at least was Region B, and I'm pretty sure this Blu-ray will be Region B as well. Uncompressed stereo PCM audio, archival interview with Dennis Hopper. He discusses the movie and features footage of John Lee Hooker and images from the set. There's an interview with Virginia Madsen and William Sadler, who was in the film as well. Nick Dawson on Dennis Hopper and The Hotspot, an interview with the editor of Dennis Hopper interviews from 2023. Dwayne Swerzinski on Charles Williams's source novel. The crime writer and expert looks at the adaptation and provides a background of the author. I think these were all previously on the Blu-ray itself. So yeah, that is The Hotspot, coming out August 17th. Yeah, these are the August releases from Radiance. Radiance is one of those companies that's always like 1 month ahead of everyone else. But for other things we have here um, on Radiance, we have their World Noir Volume 5 box set. That's right, they're on to Volume 5 already. I have 2 and 3 in my collection. Still need to get Volume 4. Volume 1 is long out of print. If you can find a Volume 1 for a good price, snag it while you can, because that is tough to get. So in Volume 5 here, we have the movie The Bandit, Against the Law, and Four Ways Out. Now, I was only able to see The Bandit and the last movie, Four Ways Out. The second movie you could not find streaming, you could not find anywhere. It's one of those. But for those of you who've been collecting these box sets, you know that these are rather diverse box sets, kind of traversing the world of noir all around uh, the globe. Suzanne, how do you feel about just the noir genre in general? Is it one of your favorites? Because it's always been one of mine.
So, there's the really classic American noir that, film you've just seen some of them. Some of them are really big films, but it's such a huge world that when you start looking into it, there is just so many films. And this particular box has an Italian theme, if I'm correct. So these are all Italian noirs. So not only can you just delve into noir, which was an almost infinite amount of films in America, we've got noir coming from other places like Italy. I have to say, I know nothing about Italian noir, but I'm sure it's great. I'm, super stylish, beautiful, and I'm sure they go further than some of the American films would have. Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you say that, because when we think of film noir, you're right. We think of the classic American film noirs of the 1940s and the 1950s. We think of The Maltese Falcon. We think of Double Indemnity, Out of the Past. You know, we think of detective stories and stuff like that. And I think a lot of us forget that. I think film noir kind of came out of Europe, if I do recall. It's kind of a mesh of like German expressionism of like the 20s and 30s, as well as French cinema too. Uh, and what's interesting about these, at least from the two that I saw, it's also they took kind of American film noir and meshed it with Italian neorealism, which is a mesh I never thought would actually come together. It was fascinating to me because my introduction to Italian cinema was through Italian neorealism. And for those of you who don't know what Italian neorealism is that, after World War II, in the aftermath of World War II, um, the film industry, specifically in Europe, kind of made movies uh, commenting or were thematically affected by the events of World War II. In Italian neorealism, you get movies like Rome Open City, Germany Year Zero by Roberto Rossellini that were shot literally in the rubble of buildings and cities in Europe. So it was really capturing the sense of the culture of that time, really the sense of the desperation of the culture of that time to essentially rebuild from nothing, and what were the power structures put in place to help the people or lack thereof. There's a great movie I talk about all the time called Umberto D by Vittorio De Sica, which is an amazing movie that's basically about an elderly man and his dog, and the way in which the world um, treats people like that in that society of that time. There's no like social safety net or things like that to help these types of people. It's fascinating cultural look at history and stuff like that. Suzanne, you can probably, I don't think you know this yet, but I'm also a big history person myself. So my college degree is in history, so I automatically go towards like a history vibe. So when it comes to these movies in the 1940s in Europe, I like to contextualize them by saying, hey, it's post World War II. The world is vastly different, specifically culturally. And the first movie here, The Bandit, is literally kind of exactly what I was just saying. It says, returning from the war, Ernesto comes home without a family to welcome him. A chance encounter with the gangsters Mo Lydia, portrayed by Anna Magnani, who was coincidentally in Rome Open City, catapults him to a life of crime. A redolent of American gangster pictures in the 1930s and bathed in chiaroscuro lighting, like many Italian genre films, Alberto Latuada's The Bandit is a genre hybrid, at once noirish but infused with realism that brings to the fore the desperation of the post-war period. Newly restored Radiance Films is proud to present this seminal film on any digital format for the first time outside of Italy. So, like
I'll
I was
just
just,
add,
hmm?
like you were saying about
Yeah.
history, that's the interesting thing, is that something I often say is that film and history run as parallel lines,
Oh yeah.
basically. So what was happening in film really does reflect a lot of the time, not always, but most of the time, what's happening in society, and can tell us so much about that time and maybe who made them as well. So
Exactly.
depending where they were made. So you get kind of politics, you get gender politics, you get fashion, you get art, you get makeup, style, you kind of get everything in a package
Yeah.
as a snapshot.
Yeah, one of my sayings, I think that's I've been saying it on here forever. Even previous podcasts I've done, is that movies are usually a reflection of the society in which they are made. They're reflecting the society during the times in which they're made, which is basically exactly what Suzanne just said. And some of those movies, it's fascinating to me because they still stand the test of time today. Like, for example, in this movie, this person comes back from a war. A family that he left behind, have all passed away because of things that happened during the war, or they've moved on to other things, and he's kind of left with nothing, and he's got to rebuild, and he basically does so through becoming a criminal, which in today's society, people in today's economy, today's world, people get desperate enough to commit crimes in order to survive, in order to make money to pay for food, in order to make money to pay for housing or to support families or whatever that the case may be. That's kind of something that happens throughout the decades. This just happens to frame it within the context of a post massive world war, but even putting it on a micro level still happens today. So this movie is depicting those things. Now, I didn't, like I said, I didn't get to see Against the Law. But it says a middle class man laundering money for the mob to make ends meet, once again, doing desperate things at desperate times, witnesses a murder during a currency exchange. Fingered as the murderer by the police, he and his girlfriend attempt to clear his name. A Hitchcockian wrong man thriller in a crime. In a crime framework, Pietro Germi's scenario echoes the American noir, with a screenplay co-authored by the former head of Rome's flying squad. Against the Law was noted for its realism on release, where it was a hit with audiences and critics, starring Marcello Mastroianni, a person many people know from Italian cinema. He was in so many movies, so many movies. In his first leading role, Flavio Calzav- Calzavara Calzavara's underseen gem is now restored in 4K and released for the first time on any format outside of Italy. And then we have Four Ways Out. A gang of four ordinary men steal two cases stuffed with money from a football ground. They split up to evade capture, but misplaced allegiances and nerves threaten their freedom. A Hollywood-style noir by Pietro Germi. Four Ways Out, also known as The City Defends Itself, features the classic tropes of the genre: femme fatales, desperate men, and a cityscape that threatens to swallow up its characters. It's one of those classic kind of like Rafifi, or there's another one by John Huston that I'm completely forgetting about. Is it not the Concrete Jungle? It's something like that. The Asphalt Jungle. I was close. Concrete and asphalt, similar things. The Asphalt Jungle, where people commit a crime, they pull it off, but then it's the aftermath that becomes complicated, where you can't trust the other person. This person wants, may want a bigger cut of the money now. The police are after them. There's car chases. They've got to split up. That creates all kinds of problems. People are hiding money in certain places. It's one of those types of movies. I've always really liked that kind of genre within film noir. For the special features and such, 4K restoration of all three films from the original camera negatives, original uncompressed mono PCM audio for all films, newly improved optional English subtitles, reversible sleeves featuring newly redesigned artworks based on the original posters, limited edition 80-page book, and these are limited to 3,000 copies. But like I said, once these do sell out, I've noticed them going for pretty hefty prices on eBay, as usual. For the first film, there's an interview with critic Fabio Metelli on Latuada's career, interview with Evelina Nazari about her father, actor Amedeo Nazari, interview with Melelli and Nazari about The Bandit, and an interview with critic Christina Newland on Anna Magnani. Against the Law has an interview with critic Manuela Lazic on Marcello Mastroianni, interview with Italian film expert Stephen Gundel on Flavio Calzavara, and then Four Ways Out has an alternate English language version of the movie, interview with Pietro Germi, expert Mario Sesti, interview with noir expert Imogen Sarah Smith. Oh, nice. And yeah, this comes out in August as well, August 17th. I think these all come out on the same day, which makes it much easier than having to read off different dates. Also, I'm still not used to seeing the European dates, the way they're structured versus the US dates. Always throws me. So 10 Women in Black. Now, this is an interesting film that may interest you just because it is a revenge film about women who are wronged by a man. So I find that an interesting subgenre in and of itself. So 10 Women in Black, a television executive's 9 mistresses. So he has got 9 mistresses in this film. Conspire
Busy
with his...
guy.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, my goodness,
where does he find all the energy?
Yeah. And what is interesting about the movie is, he's got a wife and 9 mistresses, and he's a television executive too, and he's like a wealthy television executive. I don't know when he finds the time. When Miyawaka, one of the mistresses, tells him of the plot, he decides to fake his own death in front of them all. The women panic and deny that they were ever serious about the murder. while Miwako even takes her own life in remorse. So what is interesting about the movie is that you've got these wife and the nine mistresses. They basically plot to get rid of this guy because he's wronged them, and basically one of them has regrets about doing that, tells him they faked a death, but then like complications ensue after that. So it's one of those things where like revenge can be complicated. It's not always easy. It's like one of those things where, if you go down the road of revenge, dig two graves, or something like that old saying. It's a fascinating movie. Let's see. When they found out the man is alive, they put their original plan back into action. Given complete creative freedom, Kan Ichikawa made this dark satire one of the undiscovered gems of Japan's cinematic golden age, featuring a stunning cast of Daiei Studio divas and striking monochrome photography by Setsuo Kabayashi. This is a merciless dissection of social relations and gender roles in an affluent post-war Japan. Yet again, another post-war type of theme going on. We're looking at the Japanese culture, which is fascinating when it comes to gender dynamics in Japanese culture, especially post-war Japanese culture. I find fascinating. I always go back to the films of Yasujiro Ozu, and one of his themes is just kind of like the changing of the culture, the modernization of the culture, but still holding on to like um, past cultural tradition, the past cultural norms. I feel like that's even something that's struggling today. We see people who want to go back to the quote unquote good old days and things like that. And it's like, who were those good old days good for, actually? Once you put that into context, things don't become as good as I think people think they were.
Though
But yeah,
when
yeah,
I
go on.
did the work for New Wave and those Japanese films, that was something I touched on. So gender is something that is covered a lot in Japanese film. And it's really interesting. It's really nuanced. This, of course, comes from Day Studio, which they make amazing films. I haven't seen this, but I'm super interested. It sounds amazing. I know it's going to be amazing.
Hmm.
But yeah, I know post-war, during the American occupation of
Hmm.
Japan, a lot of Western influence came into Japan in terms of gender as well, that was quite different. So there was definitely a lot of topical stuff at that time about these changes and ideas. And in Japanese film, there is this acknowledgement, I think, in a lot of film about the suffering of women. So Japanese women tend to suffer a lot or
Hmm.
have a hard time in many Japanese films. They're often the vengeful ghosts or the, scorned lovers or wives, or, all these kinds of roles. But there is this interesting kind of acknowledgement of how they suffer and then the consequences of this, which is super interesting. So,
Yeah, I've noticed that pattern in a lot of the Japanese ghost stories of the 1950s and 1960s. I'm thinking of like Kuroneko and things like that. I'm thinking of even Ugetsu is another film where these Japanese ghost stories are usually about you know like Suzanne just said, women who've been abused in the past, killed in the past, scorned in the past, and then they come back as these vengeful ghosts. And it's interesting how that is a recurring theme throughout Japanese films of that time. Uh,
and the other
hmm,
trope is, I guess, the used woman. So women forced into sex work,
yes.
or mistresses, or basically women who are not in traditional roles of wife and mother, although they are often abused as well. So there is a whole kind of trope of those women that have suffered in these ways, like you said, to facilitate society and social normality, basically. Um, and they are shown as well. So I find it interesting that there is that element of the culture, but the suffering is acknowledged so often in film.
What is it? It's interesting that we keep talking about that, and then I'm also wondering, just taking a little kind of more of a macro level, what is done in the society to change that? You know what I mean? Like, what is done? Like, we're recognizing this suffering of and oppression of peoples, women, minorities of the past. Then what? And we're noticing, and we're recurring that theme throughout our media, throughout the art. Then what is done within the society to kind of change that? You kind of seeing that sometimes there's a disconnect between those two things, and it's just fascinating how people don't tend to pay attention to what the artwork is saying, because it's not just art for entertainment. There's meaning behind it. It's to elicit change within our society. That's
And
fascinating.
the
Well,
fascinating thing is as well that art, literature, and I think film, particularly as a medium that combines visual images, but also words, which words can be powerful, images can be powerful, and putting them together and to communicate ideas, messages, like that's powerful. But it has been proven that basically art and film creates empathy. So that's the important role, is experiencing other people's lives basically, and watching and kind of understanding and acknowledging someone else's experience, which is an experience that creates empathy. And sadly, I think that is something that is more and more falling on deaf ears. We have
oh,
films coming out with very, very like obvious messaging about these kinds of like contemporary issues surrounding politics, etc. But with the event of AI and people watching really short video content on social media, there's not so much that kind of engagement and empathy building aspect. So
yeah.
it makes films and art kind of more important than ever. And it's how can they push through, because in the past, film was really widely consumed. So
Mm,
it did have a lot of power, basically, for good or bad or whatever. But if you made a film that offered people a different point of view or an opportunity to empathize with different people and maybe change the way you think, or share ideas with you, that it was so powerful on such a massive scale. But as I guess movie going diminishes on such a wide scale in favor of short form video, that is apparently a real concern. So
yeah, I definitely agree with all of that. It's interesting, kind of, as time has gone on, as technology has advanced, and the internet. We're well into the internet age now, in which many people across the globe are connected. I mean, I'm talking with Suzanne, who's a half a world away. It's interesting how the closer we've got it to actually connecting with people through the internet, through social media, the more divided we've become. And the irony of it all is that we're more divided now, probably more than ever, on political levels, cultural levels, et cetera, et cetera. And especially with the idea of empathy, people don't tend to be very empathetic towards the plight of others. I feel like that's been lost a lot, like kind of like what Suzanne just said. And also, the idea of like, we don't really realize things until they happen to us. You know what I mean? We don't really have like, someone else could be going through something, and we don't realize how severe that is until we feel that same thing. So there's no empathy there, that we don't really share that with them. It's a fascinating kind of cultural thing that kind of progresses as time goes on. I mean, it's very interesting. It's all moving in real time. Like, we're living through history constantly. I don't know if a lot of people realize that. But going back in time now to this Kanichikawa film from way back when, which is still relevant to this day. We have a 4K restoration by Kadokawa Pictures, original uncompressed mono audio, The Kan Ichikawa Story, a feature-length documentary directed by Shunji Iwai, featuring Ichikawa and his wife, screenwriter Nato Wada, and then trailer, and then new improved English subtitles. So not a lot going on here in terms of more features, but there is a booklet, and there are two Kan Ichikawa films that Criterion just put out recently. And I want to actually look them up really quickly because they're both excellent. And coincidentally, Turner Classic Movies was playing one last night while I was just preparing for the episode today. Um, let's see, Kan Ichikawa. The Kan Ichikawa is a Japanese director that I've discovered recently. It's The Burmese Harp and Fires on the Plain, which are excellent. If you have a chance to watch those movies, I would highly recommend checking those out. Um, they're excellent. I added them to my collection, within the last year or so. So this is region A. So this is region 3, region A and B. So let's move back to the main page here, and let's move on to the next movie. So this is actually the last movie that I actually did not get to see this film. The Magnificent Cuckold is the title. I did read the premise of it. So I will read that here. So it's another movie dealing with gender politics here. This is a bit of a theme going on with these movies. A happily married businessman succumbs to the advances of one of his less square, more open-minded female friends. Sorry, the concept of somebody being a square is such old-fashioned to me. Didn't know how to read it. His eyes now open to the rampant adultery among his high society acquaintances. He's amazed at the ease with which they lie to their loved ones. Soon he begins to suspect his loving wife, who portrayed by the gorgeous Claudia Cardinal, of infidelity, even as she guesses nothing of his own extramarital affair. So this is a movie dealing with double standards. Like I said, I didn't get to see the movie, but readily from that description, double standards within gender politics, not something new. It's been around for quite a while. In this movie, this affluent couple living in this upper class rich society, the man is so taken aback by probably the way in which his peers are cheating on their wives. That's my guess. And he's like, well, wait a minute. Perhaps my wife is cheating on me. Meanwhile, he's cheating on her, but he gets so offended and so insecure that his wife would be cheating on him that kind of drives him mad. But yet again, it's playing on the gender politics of men and women, and how the inequality and the imbalance of the relationships that we see today. Go on to any social media platform, you'll see people talking about their relationships rather openly, and you see these things today. Infidelity, insecurities, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I know we're just kind of going over the same thing, Suzanne, but I just find it so fascinating how we're running into some of the same themes in these movies over and over again.
And such a great title, the word cuckold, which is a really, really old word that goes right back to, at least Tudor times, but probably way before that into medieval times as well. And it's basically like another rooster or cock has jumped into your nest of hens, and it's considered the kind of ultimate, kind of robbery of manhood and virility and
emasculation,
affront.
like that. Yeah. It is playing on this kind of modern idea of the alpha male, beta male stuff and whatnot. It is a term. I would say
the word just infers like emasculation, basically.
Very much so.
Yeah.
The term is used as an insult. To be honest, I've seen it used on many a social media platform when people are arguing.
It's a modern slang. Yeah. Apparently it's a modern slang as well.
It is, but like you say, it has older roots in terms of its meaning.
Yeah.
The whole study of languages is also kind of a fascinating thing. It's a little bit of an aside here, but languages go back centuries, centuries upon centuries. But this movie here is a 4K restoration of the film from the original camera negative by Cineteca di Bologna in collaboration with Compass Film and Studio Cine, uncompressed mono PCM audio, new interview with Italian film expert Richard Dyer, new visual essay by Italian cinema professor Reme Fournier Lanzoni, altered color sequences, newly improved English subtitles, reversible sleeve art, and I believe there's a booklet here as well. Yes, limited edition booklet, and then three limited 3,000 copies. Yeah, this is also region A and B, so essentially region free for the most part. Uh, but that is kind of it. There is one movie here that it's not. I believe it's from one of the sub labels called The Last Circus, which I've talked about because some other company had put it out recently. Um, and this is, let's see, it's from Chasm Films, is a label dedicated to curating a catalog of underseen, underappreciated, and underground contemporary world genre cinema. During the Spanish Civil War, a circus clown is recruited to the Republican cause and forced to massacre dozens of nationalist troops with only a machete. Kind of gruesome. Decades later, his traumatized son Javier becomes a clown himself, albeit a sad clown fueled by the tragedy he has seen. He performs opposite the arrogant, happy clown Sergio and finds himself falling in love with Sergio's partner, the beautiful acrobat Natalia. Soon, sad clown and happy clown are locked in a love triangle that spirals into spectacular violence. Written and directed by Alex de la Iglesia. That's why I had seen it. Who did The Day of the Beast, as well as several other movies. And I believe Arrow has put out an Alex de la Iglesia box set. Several of his movies were also put out by Severin here in the US on Blu-ray and 4K. Day of the Beast being one of them, and there's a couple of other ones I'm completely blanking on right now. But he's he's one of those darker filmmakers who really pushes the envelopes. This says it's a blackly comic horror show that revels in the shocking, transgressive, and the absurd. To me, when it comes to dark comedy, some of it can be funny, some of it can just be horrific. To me, it's kind of really toes that line. But this is an interesting movie once again, talking about. We just talked about the emasculation and the difference in the male within the male gender and stuff like that. This movie definitely tackles that because you've got two different men pining after one woman, the classic love triangle and all of that stuff, plus a little political history in the background too. So that is The Last Circus. So that I believe is it for Radiance here.
And I'll say about Radiance, even if you haven't seen their films, I think the Radiance label is the most wonderfully curated collection of films. They really select these beautiful, high quality, really interesting, often underrated films for their collection. So I just love seeing what they announce every time. By the way, Day of the Beast is one of my favorite horror films. I absolutely love it. Being a heavy metal fan, that
Yeah,
I really
that makes
connect
sense
with that
because
film.
I was thinking, okay, so yeah, these the movies and stuff. So my brain works as I need something to like kickstart it. So Accio Mutante, some mutant action. That's another one of his. The Day of the Beast, and then the one that I was thinking of is Perdita Durango. That's another movie from the '90s. That's a dark movie with Rosie Perez.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a movie. Yeah, but Day of the Beast is about a priest, right? Bringing about the end of the world, right?
Yeah, and a heavy metal shop.
Yes,
I just
yes.
love the metal guys hanging around the heavy metal shop. It's got a really strong element of black humor to it. And if you've ever hung around music stores or especially heavy metal stores, like back whenever in the 80s or 90s or whatever, there was a real thing that happened there. And I think yeah, it's a film made with love for
Yeah,
its
I
topic.
totally agree. Yeah. 90s metal is I mean, this is me going on and me. I've always wanted to do something when it comes to music, but I've never really delved into it. But the if you want to talk about the history of movies is interesting. The history of music is also fascinating, especially 20th century music, just rock music in general. But yeah, 90s metal shops. I'm thinking like vinyl records, then the advent of CDs and all kinds of stuff. I'm thinking all kinds of stuff in my head. But yeah, I do also want to echo like what I say here every time we talk about Radiance. One of the best labels I think to come along in the last few years. Every single month, like clockwork, they announce their titles pretty early on in the month, and we talk about them here. We've had Fran Simeone here on Chasing Labels a couple of times, really right at the launch of Radiance Films, and then a year after, kind of after the first full year, to come back, give us a little recollection of the first year of running his own label. That was really cool. And yeah, I've got a whole Radiance shelf where it's got all my Radiance stuff on it. I'm trying. Suzanne probably doesn't know this, but I'm trying to collect like every Radiance title, and that's why I keep bemoaning about when they go out of stock or out of print. They're tough to find. I'm still missing a couple of the early big time titles that I've got to get my hands on. Like I said, World Noir Volume 1, the End of Civilization box set. I still need to get that, and those are getting pricier and pricier as the seconds go along. But moving on from Radiance, let's check out the next one here on our list. Let's see, and let's see, Warner Archive. Okay, we'll go to Warner Archive. That seems like a good place to go. Warner Archive was, I believe, the earliest label to get their titles out in this cycle of preparing for Chasing Labels. Let me see, there it is. So Warner Archive has their June releases. June is my birthday month, so let's see what they have in store for me. So let me read off these titles and then we'll get into them. So Last Summer from 1969. Pretty Maids All in a Row from 1971. Start the Revolution Without Me from 1970. Come Live With Me from 1941. Night and Day from 1946. 30 Seconds Over Tokyo from 1944. Strange Cargo from 1940, Rosemary from 1936, Letty Linton from 1932, which people were buzzing about this release. Then we have the Dastardly and Muttley and the Flying Machines, the complete series. I just add that in, even though it's not a movie, because I love classic animation, like the Hanna-Barbera animation and Looney Tunes and things like that. So anytime those get Blu-ray releases, I do get very excited. But Last Summer. Now, Suzanne, you did say that you're familiar with the movie Last Summer.
Well, I know it's directed by Frank Perry, and he directed a film that I really love, Mummy Dearest.
Oh, nice.
I adore that film. So, but this is very different. This is a dark coming of age psychological drama, and there was a whole bunch of these kinds of films that came out in the late 60s and 70s. A lot of them came out of England, where we had these quite dark, macabre stories about teenagers or young people. So there was things like Deep End and Soon the Darkness, I Start Counting. They were all 1970, but there was this, real focus on coming of age as a genre, as something quite dark and twisted, and there was often murder or death involved or some kind of thriller twist. So this is one of them. It's a pretty classic coming of age story. It's not been widely available, so this is great that they're bringing this title.
Yeah, and this was announced a little while ago, and I covered it here when it was initially announced, but obviously now we have more details about this release. I believe Larry Karaszewski was responsible for the restoration of this movie, or he helped spur that along. We had Larry Karaszewski here on Chasing Labels once upon a time years ago. Very active on social media, especially when it comes to these restorations and the exhibits of these restorations. I know he worked, I think, on Amadeus, which recently got a 4K release. But Last Summer, I talked about it when it was initially announced a little while ago, and the movie captures this interesting time in life. I'm endlessly fascinated by coming of age films, and specifically coming of age films throughout the decades and throughout the generations of different peoples, because there's certain universal truths, I think, that happen within every generation, that it's fascinating to see how that's documented along the way. I go all the way back to the 1950s with like Rebel Without a Cause, and then I move on to like what was it like in the 60s and the 70s and 80s. Then we get to the more modern age with the millennials, which is what I am. And then we have the Gen Zs, and then the Gen Alphas will, they'll have their version of coming of age stories and and themes and things like that. So Last Summer hits on a lot of culturally relevant and contemporary themes and universal themes. It's about a small group of friends. I use the term friends loosely. Just a good, like, older teenagers, and they take this younger teenager kind of under their wing, and that's kind of how the story goes. And things get interesting because it's just them kind of fooling around, doing what teenage angsty teens do. You know, going to the movies, hanging out, and it's at a time where it's a different time. There's no real technological entertainment of the time like we have now. No internet, no. I mean, television is around, but it's not like today. The movies are different in terms of when they play and all this kind of stuff. So kids of that era and of that time had to find different activities to get into to entertain themselves, specifically during summer vacation, where you have all this unstructured time. And this movie's fascinating from about what it gets into, and it's just, I think it's really excellent. And I don't want to spoil anything about the movie, but it ends in a dark way, very dark way. Set during a languid season on Fire Island, Last Summer is a stark and unsettling coming-of-age drama that captures the disaffection and moral drift of the late 1960s with unflinching honesty. Directed by Frank Perry, who did Diary of a Mad Housewife. He also did the movie The Swimmer with Burt Lancaster. You want to talk about a movie about existentialism? That whole movie is just existential in general, traversing the whole life of that character in that film. Let's see. The film follows four teenagers played by Barbara Hershey, Richard Thomas, Bruce Davison, and Catherine Burns, whose summer of idle freedom and social detachment gradually gives way to tragedy. Shot in a naturalistic style, Last Summer eschews easy judgments, instead presenting a chilling examination of youthful entitlement and emotional void. It does also capture that idea of kind of lost youth, like youth without purpose, which I think is a fascinating theme throughout the generations, where there's these in between generations. I feel like, or these in between groups of people that are like, they're too young to get into what their older generation got into, and they're not quite. And then once they become of age, that stuff that the older generation got into, it's past now. It's past now. Specifically with the 1960s, with so much cultural turmoil going on throughout the world, specifically here in the United States. But yeah, this is a hauntingly interesting movie. I'm so glad it's got a restoration and people are discovering it. New 4K
And there's also,
restoration.
I was going to say, with the coming of age genre, there's very often that anxiety about what the future holds. So, and it's interesting that is a theme repeated kind of no matter what the generation. So we see it in even pre-code film. We see it in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, definitely the 90s, with all those dark coming of age films like Heathers and Pump Up the Volume. There's always this anxiety of the unknown and the unknown future, and that maybe the future is not as bright and rosy as it might have been for the generation before. And this is definitely, something that's being expressed now by younger generations now as well. Like, they're worried about these things. What does the future hold? And that's certainly a trait of all of these films, even if it's a very subtle anxiety expressing, it's almost like you've got no future. It's a bit punk. It's just live in the moment. There's no future. So that's definitely an interesting thing that occurs throughout these coming of age films, particularly the dark one, these dark kind of genre, nihilistic kind of ones.
That is interesting. It's also interesting how that theme, you kind of mentioned that now. I feel like that's drifted over from the fictional world of movies into our society now. This idea of like the the world having an even worse future than our present, which some people can't really quite fathom. It's interesting growing up as a millennial and then now being an adult as a millennial. you realized how wrong people got it. You realize how things that we were told when we were younger, things we were told that in order to live a quote unquote good life or to be prepared for the future, which is things that we all did, all ended up being just a waste of time because we're here now and none of those things mattered. You know what I mean? I don't want to go on a huge political rant here, but growing up in the 90s, I was born in 87, growing up in the 90s, all we ever heard about was you had to go to college, get an education so you can get a good job. And once you get a good job, you'll get money and you'll be happy. That's the key. You know what I mean? And they beat that into us when we were younger. Well, we did that, and then when we got older, there were no jobs. The increase in living rapidly skyrocketed. So the money we are making is not enough to live on. And then we incurred all of this debt to go to college to get the degree you told us we had to get. And now we're in debt and we're suffering. And you can't prepare for the future because even the things they tell you to prepare for the future, chances are they're not going to work because life is changing so rapidly. Like nobody could predict the way in which the world is now, 30, 40 years ago. That's a whole big thing. Go for a different podcast for a different time. But
and also say from a female perspective, like women's perspective, in the 50s and 60s and maybe even 70s, there was a thing, what's it called? Cinderella syndrome, where girls grew up, you will get married, you will have children, you'll have a beautiful kind of domestic life and being prepared for this Cinderella dream, basically the fairy tale, basically, in the domestic environment. And then they got there and very often it was shitty.
Yeah.
And it was boring. And, women had massive depression and popped Valium and stuck their head in the gas oven. And
yeah,
was that Sylvia Plath did that? I can't remember.
It was Sylvia Plath. Yeah, she wrote the Bell Jar.
Yeah, and she kind of expressed a lot of that Cinderella syndrome, I guess. But yeah, that's another thing. So that's what a lot of these films bring up, those kind of, well, what's the use? What's the point? And I mean, there's always a point, we learn and we benefit from what we do. But yeah, it's just interesting that that's a thing that goes through all these coming of age films.
Yeah, it's just fascinating because we wonder why the modern generations are so, depression is rampant, anxiety is rampant, all this kind of, mental health is all of a sudden, not all of a sudden, it's always been there, but we haven't addressed it in the past. Why is it so prominent now? It's because, like I just said, we didn't address it generations beforehand, so it just builds up and builds up, gets thrust upon the following generation to deal with, and here we are really now. But going back in time and looking at the films of the 60s and looking at the films even of the 50s, like I said, Rebel Without a Cause, that whole movie is just about, the youth culture of the 50s kind of screaming out against the previous culture, listen to us, and then, but of course, people, older generations tend to ignore the younger generations. That's a whole thing. And if people communicated more, perhaps the world would be a better place, essentially. But for the last summer, there's a new 4K restoration and reconstruction from the camera negative and preservation elements. There's a new feature-length audio commentary by Golden Globe winning screenwriter Larry Karaszewski and film historian / author Justin Bozung. There's a post-screening Q&A at the American Cinematheque in Santa Monica with Larry Karaszewski, Barbara Hershey, and Bruce Davison from this year, actually. There's a post-screening Q&A at the Paris Theater in New York with Larry Karaszewski and Richard Thomas. That was done in May, which is 2 weeks ago. Then there's the Trailers from Hell commentary by Larry Karaszewski, deleted scene with Richard Thomas and Ralph Waite, Allied Artists promotional reel, the original theatrical trailer, and there's subtitles as well. They're coming out June 30th. Then we move on to Pretty Maids All in a Row. Shocking at the time of its creation, the dawn of the sexual revolution. But what a theme we have going on here for this episode of Chasing Labels.
Yes, I have to point out this film. I haven't seen it. I'm deeply fascinated by it and really want to see it. It's directed by Roger Vadim, who directed Barbarella, but he also directed one of my all-time favorite films, which is the vampire film Blood and Roses,
Oh,
which is not really available in the physical media realm. There might be like a European DVD somewhere along the line, but it's a missing in action film, and it's one of the most beautiful, definitive vampire films. It's an adaptation of Sheridan Le Fanu's Carmilla.
oh
And if you
yeah.
look at old books on horror movies, there's always photos from it in there, which is where I discovered it. But anyway, that's a total sidetrack. But
I know
um,
it fits in
given
because
that, yeah,
it fits in because there've been so many kind of you know yeah that because within the vamp you could probably say this a lot better than I could, but within the vampire subgenre, there's always gender themes in there and sexual gender themes in there. There's of course there's it's tied up with sexuality and eroticism, things like that. But it's definitely in there. But Pretty Maids All in a Row is interesting movie just from the cast alone. And it came out in the 1970s, I believe. It says and perhaps even more unthinkable today, this bawdy black comedy was written and produced by Gene Roddenberry from Star Trek fame, creator of Star Trek, and directed by Roger Vadim. We mentioned who directed Barbarella. Rock Hudson, Angie Dickinson, Telly Savalas, Roddy McDowall, Keenan Wynn, and James Doohan star in a story of a young man's first sexual explorations, which are threatened by a string of murders in a California high school. A married coach and faculty advisor, portrayed by Rock Hudson, beds his female students and eventually has to kill several of them to keep them quiet. That kind of spoils the movie right there. Sorry about that. Uh, it says Ponce de Leon Harper, John David Carson, who is starting to get neurotic and suffer academically because of his lack of sex, lusts after his sexy new substitute teacher, Angie Dickinson, who soon takes care of his problem. They really gave away the entire movie in this description. But either way, it is kind of like an exploitative erotic film for the 1970s, in which essentially Rock Hudson is sleeping with his students in a high school setting, which in and of itself is already a modern day taboo, I would say, let alone for something from the 1970s. Telly Savalas is the detective who's kind of on the case of trying to figure out what's going on with these murders and whatnot. And yeah, there's also like I said, there's a young coming of age type of like B storyline going on in there as well. Interesting movie. A wild movie, I would say. But there's a new 4K restoration of the camera negative, and that's really it. No special features. But one of my collecting things is I want to get all of the movies starring Rock Hudson. So I will have to eventually add this to the collection. I'm a big Rock Hudson fan. I just really really like Rock Hudson. Um, and yeah, he's interesting in this movie. He is sporting the most like 1970s mustache you've ever seen in this film. He's so picture perfect for the time. Uh, Even with the clothing and the outfit of the 70s, which many of you probably know just how not flamboyant, but how unique the 70s aesthetic looks. Um, it's an interesting movie. But moving on from there, we have Start the Revolution Without Me, which is like a Mel Brooks style comedy starring Gene Wilder, and produced and directed by Bud Yorkin, who was mostly a producer, like a TV producer, and he did some directing on television as well. He didn't do a lot of movies. This movie is not the best for those of you interested at home. It's a satire about the start of the French Revolution, with a little bit of like Prince and the Pauper type of uh, vibe in it. So, produced and directed by comedy veteran Bud Yorkin, Start the Revolution Without Me broke ground for a comedy revolution. It takes the tumultuous, let them eat cake days of the French Revolution and gives everyone a figurative pie in the face. The story begins when two sets of identical twins, one pair of bumbling peasants, Gene Wilder and Donald Sutherland, one pair of arrogant aristocrats, also portrayed by Gene Wilder and Donald Sutherland, are separated at birth decades later on the bloody eve of the French Revolution. A case of mistaken identity tosses the wrong brothers into the wrong lives. As the guillotines loom and the Palace of Versailles descends into absolute chaos, these four unlikely heroes must navigate royal tryst, deadly duels, and a plot to overthrow King Louis XVI. So, like I said, it's kind of like a Mel Brooks film, but Mel Brooks wasn't involved in it. Perhaps that's probably why it's not the best. I first heard about this movie because recently there was a Gene Wilder documentary, and it kind of traverses his life and career, and there's certain clips from this movie that are in it. Um, it's an interesting movie. If you're a Gene Wilder big time fan and you want to see it, I would say see it, but it's not particularly great in my opinion. New Four,
I have to
yeah,
say,
go on.
I'm actually looking forward to seeing this. I don't think I've seen it, or it might have been on television at one point, but I love these kind of historical comedies, like history-based comedies. I
Mm.
find them absolutely hilarious. So I'll give this one a go.
You know what? That's kind of my fascination with that. Like, what was it? History of the World Part One is the Mel Brooks film. Um, the kind of parroting the history of the war up until like a certain part, history of the world up until a certain part. I think they just did a sequel to that actually. That was straight to streaming a couple of years ago. Of course, they're doing a sequel to Spaceballs, which is supposed to be coming out. Mel Brooks still going at 100 years old, kind of amazing. Uh, but like I said, this isn't a Mel Brooks film, but it has that vibe to it, I guess. But yeah, like I said, I would say give it a watch. It's kind of that's the one thing with comedy. I don't know how you feel about this, Suzanne. Comedy for me is like the most subjective genre because what's funny to one person isn't funny to the other, and there's so many different types of comedy. Not
Mm.
all of it may be funny to someone. Uh, that's just my take on it. Uh, New 4K restoration from the original camera negative, or from the camera negative. Classic Warner Brothers cartoons, the Scarlet Pumpernickel and Napoleon Bunny part. That's a little take on some history there. Then we have Come Live With Me. Beautiful Austrian political refugee Johnny Jones, Hedy Lamarr, is about to be deported, leaving the loving arms of a married Manhattan publisher for the waiting arms of, well, those Nazis going on in Europe. The solution: instant citizenship via a marriage of convenience with flat broke writer Bill Smith, portrayed by none other than Jimmy Stewart, in which the only thing they'll share in this is the same last name. A chic romp stylishly directed by Clarence Brown, Come Live With Me tempers its sophistication with plenty of charm, compliments of the two iconic stars. And that is honestly the reason to watch this movie. You have Hedy Lamarr, you have Jimmy Stewart, two big time iconic names from the golden age of Hollywood starring in this movie together. They starred in a couple of films together, but this is a nice little, no, I would say, romantic dramedy, if you will, mostly comedy and whatnot, where Hedy Lamarr's character, if she doesn't get married, she's going to get deported to Europe during World War II, not the best place to be at that time. And she just comes across this Jimmy Stewart, who just happens to be hanging out in the streets at the time. And he's kind of this poor, like, wannabe author. And they end up striking up this relationship. And they have a marriage of convenience where they just get married. He gets paid like a weekly stipend from her, but they never really see each other. Uh, but he through happenstance they uh they end up like their relationship ends up flourishing, if you will. It's one of those classic ones where they initially don't have a relationship, but then they do have a relationship, and it's got that old Hollywood magic that you just kind of have to go with it, which I really like. I find those movies really charming, as ridiculous as they may be. uh
And
Newport,
two
yeah,
big stars. I know people will be down for this for Hedy Lamarr.
yeah,
Um,
one of my
I love
favorites,
her,
Hedy
but
Lamarr.
am I? Yes, me too. Would I be correct in thinking this somewhat, not completely, kind of mirrors her journey because she was in Europe during World War II and she had to flee
Mm.
Nazi territory, as I recall, and she came to America. So that's a little interesting. I can't completely remember her history, but she was married to someone very prominent to do with the Nazi party, I think, and she actually fled. She
I really,
fled,
I need to do my.
yeah,
'Cause there's a lot of people who fled in the 1930s because they could see once the Nazi Party, took power and were on the
yeah,
rise. They got out of there. They got out of there and came over to the United States. Um, there were
Well,
certain detectives.
she left her husband and everything.
Yeah, and came over
So
here. I
yeah, so
I know
that's
there's
an interesting side note that she
yeah.
does, she lived through that. So not that it's the same storyline, but it's a similar
Yeah.
storyline to what she had lived through. And obviously Ingrid Pitt is another
Hmm.
actress that you know, went through. So anyway,
Yeah, I mean that's a good yeah. 'Cause there is a documentary that I've been wanting to watch for years on Hedy Lamarr. I can't remember the name of it.
oh, I
And
think it's just Bombshell or
yeah, Bombshell.
something.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I watched, that's where I'm thinking I got this idea from. I have seen it. It's a really good documentary. Obviously one of screen's most radiant, beautiful actresses and wonderful, and did many wonderful films, but she was also so much more. She was a
Yes.
super interesting, intelligent, gifted woman.
Yeah, she was an inventor. Uh, she
Yes.
she basically is the reason why we have Wi-Fi now. She created kind of a radar type system that was then adopted by the military, um, for like tracking and things like that. And that was the earliest forms of kind of what Wi-Fi would then become in our modern times. That's an interesting thing. She was quite a phenomenal woman. But yeah, like I said, I want to check out that documentary. Uh,
Do, it's great.
Yeah, so it has the endorsement of Suzanne. So I'm taking that all the way to the bank. New 4K restoration from the camera negative, classic MGM shorts, America Preferred, From the Four Corners, and the MGM cartoon Officer Pooch, and then English subtitles as well. Night and Day. Now, this is another one starring one of my favorites. I believe this is the movie starring Cary Grant. Yes, it is. I've seen this quite a few years ago. I may have it on DVD in like a Cary Grant collection. But swelligant, which I didn't think was a word. I didn't think you could combine swell and elegant into a word. Swelligant and elegant, deluxe and delovely. Cole Porter was the most sophisticated name in 20th century songwriting, and to play him in this highly fictionalized biopic, Warner Brothers chose debonair icon Cary Grant. Alexis Smith plays the glamorous Linda, whose serendipitous meetings with Cole lead to a meeting at the altar. More than 20 Porter songs grace this tale of triumph and tragedy, with Grant leading his amiable voice to You're the Top, Night and Day, and more. Monty Woolley, a Yale contemporary of Porter, portrays himself. Jane Wyman, Jenny Sims, Eve Arden, and others provide vocals and verve, with the highlight being Mary Martin recreating her Broadway debut, performing My Heart Belongs to Daddy. Lights, uh, Lights down, curtains up, meticulously restored from 4K scans of its original Technicolor negatives. The mere fact that they still have the original Technicolor negatives is a miracle in and of itself. Cole Porter's contributions to the great American songbook are yours to celebrate and enjoy night and day. I love the old Technicolor films, the Technicolor musicals and stuff like that. Um, I make mention of the fact that the negative that still having the negatives are a miracle, because a lot of those negatives, specifically Technicolor ones, three strip Technicolor ones, are long gone. They're long gone. They were lost, destroyed, lit up in a fire. They're long gone to this day. The fact that they still have them for this movie is a miracle. But yeah, it's been years since I've seen the movie. I'm a big Cary Grant fan, so I'll watch any movie with Cary Grant in it, no matter how large or small the role is with him. But this is an early version of a biopic that takes a lot of artistic license, which they still do to this day. Uh, the modern biopics take artistic license just as much as the old ones, I think. But we have a new 4K restoration from the Technicolor negatives, classic Warner Brothers shorts, musical movie land, Desi Arnaz and his orchestra, classic Warner Brothers cartoon, The Big Snooze, and the original theatrical trailer. Uh, yeah, 30 Seconds Over Tokyo is it's a movie based on a real life military operation at the onset of America's involvement in World War II. So, coaxing a hulking Mitchell B-25 airship into the sky from a short 500-foot carrier runway on a bouncing sea is daunting and dangerous. Tougher still is doing it with a full load of bombs. But for Lieutenant Colonel James Doolittle, Spencer Tracy, and the crewmen of 16 B-25s, that's just the start of the mission. America's first bold strike against the enemy mainland is underway. So basically, this movie, like I said, it's based on the real life military operation right after the bombing of Pearl Harbor. The United States gets involved in World War II, and one of their first military actions is to bomb the mainland Japan with this military operation. It is a success, and that's kind of what this movie shows. Is the various characters and people involved with it, from Spencer Tracy in a very small role. Actually, they put him all over the cover of this. He's not even the main character of the movie, but just like nowadays, you gotta sell the movie with the big stars. So let's put Spencer Tracy on the poster. And it's more about the other characters going on and their stories and things like that. Uh, yeah, it's fine. I'm a big Spencer Tracy fan too. So the all these movies are like right in my alley of like all the people I love to watch on screen. Uh, New 4K restoration from the best preservation elements. Classic Tom and Jerry cartoon, House Trouble, MGM shorts, Ode to Victory, A Lady Fights Back. And that is it from there. And then we have Strange Cargo, which is a movie starring Clark Gable and Joan Crawford. I tell you, they just lining up all my favorites. Uh, Strange Cargo stands as one of the most unusual and provocative films to be produced by MGM during the Halcyon days. Frank Borzage, who I think is an underrated director, brings his inspired directorial touch to this unique and atmospheric drama filled with adventures and romance. After escaping from a brutal penal colony in French Guiana, a group of convicts led by Clark Gable's character Vern trek through a sweltering jungle towards the uncertain freedom. Along the way, hard-boiled Julie, portrayed by Joan Crawford, joins the group, which is guided, perhaps judged by a quiet, enigmatic stranger, portrayed by Ian Hunter, as exhaustion and danger threatens to overwhelm them. Questions of guilt, faith, and redemption surface with the striking emotional force, featuring a standout supporting performance by Peter Lorre and moody cinematography that heightens the film's dreamlike intensity. The film remains a fitting final pairing of Gable and Joan Crawford, and one of Frank Borzage's most impressive directorial achievements. Now, what this movie has that immediately made me, um, um, uh, which really made me want to watch it, is the Catholic League. What was it? I'm gonna look it up actually on IMDb. It was that Catholic League basically that they would give their own movie ratings back in the day. I'm completely blanking on. It's not the Classic League of Decency. It's something like that. What movie am I actually looking up? I completely forgot. Let's see. Strange Cargo. Okay. So yeah. So back in the day, the Catholic Church decided to get their hands in everybody's business. A big surprise. That's kind of what they do today as well. And they decided to give movies their own ratings. They had like an A, B, and C level of ratings, but they would have like sub ratings too. So it would be like A1, A2, stuff like that, and then they would have B and C. And if you got a C rating, you were condemned. So the Catholic Church basically hated your movie. Yeah, it was the Catholic League of Decency. It was the Catholic League of Decency. There you go. So I've made it my lifelong mission that any movie that gets a C from the Catholic Church to be condemned is a movie I have to see, just because I want to see what they hated so much about this movie.
That's a mark of approval.
But I just found that fascinating. I first learned about the Catholic League of Decency through John Waters, because I'm pretty sure they gave all of his movies a C, just condemned all of them. But the fact that this, yeah, I should have looked at the comments, because Tony was right there. The Catholic Legion of Decency, that's what it is. And they would just like put C on movies. Like they had a big thing against The Last Tango in Paris, of course. But the reason why they gave this movie a C for condemned is because there is a character in this movie who's basically like a Christ-like figure. He's like a Jesus-like figure. He's kind of performing miracles. He's like giving like words of wisdom to these other prisoners, eliciting hope in these other prisoners, and he's also kind of like predicting the future as well. So he's this Christ-like figure, and he's like quoting scripture as well. So I guess the church didn't like that, and decided to give the movie a C. Uh, but yeah, I'm a big fan of Clark Gable on screen, Joan Crawford, all time classic, big time names. Uh, but yeah, it's an interesting movie. I like it more for their chemistry, which is really good. Yeah, I don't have much more to say about the movie other than that. But um, let me see. So with 4K restoration from the best preservation elements, archival feature Gable and Crawford. That must be nice because they were in several movies together. And then there's an MGM cartoon, Home on the Range, MGM Our Gang short, Going Fishing, and I believe I want to say. Let me check really quickly. I don't know if this is a pre-code film. No, it's from 1940, so it's not a pre-code film. Um, but Letty Linton is a pre-code film. Now, this movie here is a movie that has had an interesting history. This movie has essentially, it's from 1932. This movie has legally been not allowed to be exhibited since the 1930s. So this movie lost a copyright case back in the 30s, and I believe it lost a copyright case to a
I've
play
got
that
all the
has. Yeah, go on,
I've got all
Steve.
the details
Yeah,
here. If you'd like
please.
me to read them out. Yeah. So, well, to begin with, it's directed by Clarence Brown.
Hmm.
He directed a film that I really love, which is National Velvet.
Oh
That's been a
yes, Elizabeth
favorite
Taylor.
since childhood. Yeah.
Hmm.
He also did Anna Christie with Greta Garbo. He's
That's another
done
one of my favorites.
yeah, quite a few very wonderful, well-known films. So this title is super highly anticipated, and it is a really, really significant announcement because of what you just said. It's basically been considered a lost film, and it's one that has particularly excited Joan Crawford devotees, of which there are very many. And it's been really buzzing online, on Instagram, on the Joan Crawford fan pages, etc. So this is a really, really big announcement, like you said, given the film's history. It was a huge hit among Depression era audiences, but then was missing in action since 1936 because the court decided that it violated copyright law because it too closely resembled the play Dishonored Lady. However, I found it interesting that both of these stories are actually based on the same true crime. So, this real crime that happened, which was a real sensation in 1857. It was a Scottish woman called Madeline Hamilton Smith, allegedly poisoned her husband with arsenic, but she couldn't be found guilty due to lack of evidence. So basically, I think they couldn't tie her to buying the arsenic, and there wasn't enough evidence. Had she lived in England, she probably would have been hung. But apparently, in Scotland at that time, you did have to prove with the burden of evidence that someone had actually committed a crime. So she basically killed her husband for whatever reason and was never convicted and got away, which caused an absolute scandal. And the 1950 film Madeline is also based on this true crime. So all three of them are based on this real story. So it's interesting that the court ruled that this was too similar to Dishonored Lady when it's actually based on a true story. So that's interesting. And the film was actually also banned in the UK for depicting murder that's not satisfactorily punished. So at that time, censors didn't like people getting away with crimes, basically. There was meant to be a kind of moral ending where the criminal was punished. But then this reflects the story on which it was based. But apparently the US copyright of Dishonored Lady actually expired in 2025. So I believe this is why we finally get to see and now own this lost pre-code gem, which is
Yeah.
incredible. And I know people have been wanting it for a long time. I have to also add that this film has some of the most iconic imagery and publicity stills of Joan Crawford that exist, and people just share the shit out of them on Instagram, basically.
Yeah, she wears this
Every time.
yeah, she wears this iconic dress in the movie, which became
Yes. Yeah.
so popular at the time that they
Yeah.
sold massive amounts of them.
And that was, of course, designed by Adrian of Hollywood, who was one of Hollywood's most gifted and wonderful, stylish costume and gown designers. And the fashion in this film is impeccable. So if you're interested in fashion, you must see this film. If you like beautiful costumes, hair, this is the film. This is like a definitive film for this era in fashion and the designs of Adrian, who is super famous. And this film was actually described by another renowned Hollywood designer, Edith Head, as
Yeah.
this is her quote: the most influential in film history in terms of fashion. So that's a legacy that certainly continues today in fashion circles, given the iconic nature of these gowns. They have been shared and shared and shared in Joan Crawford groups, in fashion groups, in retro groups. The gowns have been copied and copied. And of course, they're couture. So you could get a couture gown from Adrian at the time, but his designs kind of also filtered down into boutiques and ready to wear and all this stuff. And there was knockoffs of the dress that weren't even like the dress. And apparently they just sold a gazillion dresses that were just called the dress from this movie, even if they didn't look like the dress from this movie. Everyone wanted to look like Joan in this film in her gowns. So this is spectacular, and it is a huge announcement.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing how it took up until 2025 for this movie to kind of be free of the copyright shackles since the 30s. And if you go on to Wikipedia and other places and whatnot, and you look at the history, they've tried throughout the decades to retry and go to court again and again to try to lift the copyright ruling. But obviously unsuccessful until now. Basically, they just waited until the play is now public domain so that the copyright laws no longer apply. Played the long game, very much the long game. But this movie, for those of you who haven't seen it, the title character, Letty Linton, is portrayed by Joan Crawford, and it's one of those kind of memorable roles ever in her career. 1932, and she is living in South America at the time, and she basically wants to escape a toxic relationship that she is in, and she kind of leaves and she meets a man on a boat portrayed by Robert Montgomery, named Jerry Darrow, and they hit it off right away. They basically fall in love instantly, and they have this glamorous transatlantic crossing from South America all the way up to New York, and they basically decide they want to get married. But when she gets back to New York, lo and behold, the guy that she essentially ran away from in South America, called Emil, is there waiting for her on the docks. Like, he is there already. Turns out he took a plane. He took the short way, flew over to New York from South America, and is waiting for her, and now basically doesn't want to let her go. It's one of those toxic situations where, if I can't have you, I'm going to ruin your chances for you to be with someone else, because he has these love letters that she wrote to him, and apparently within these letters are some rather scandalous, not scandalous, but they're probably like over romantic language and stuff like that would, I guess, perhaps ruin her reputation, or at least ruin her chances with this other man that she has fallen in love with. So you can assume complications ensue from there. I don't know if I can spoil the movie from 1932, from 80 years ago, but I guess I won't. Uh, but yeah, Suzanne mentioned, this has an iconic fashion in it. It's got one of the most iconic actresses in it all the time, in Joan Crawford. Brand new 4K restoration from the best preservation elements. I could only imagine what the elements were like to bring this Blu-ray to light. Probably not in the best light ever. Because usually when it comes to copyright, at least back then, I'm thinking of Nosferatu, F.W. Murnau's Nosferatu, which famously got sued by the Bram Stoker estate. I think it was Bram Stoker's widow sued for copyright and won. So they had to basically destroy like the available prints of that movie. Some survived, and that's why we can watch Nosferatu to this day. But they essentially destroyed that. I just mentioned Last Tango in Paris. Last Tango in Paris, I think, was sued by the Catholic Church and lost, and they had to destroy, I think, the original camera element negatives for that. So what we have today is essentially, the Blu-rays and 4K we have today is from the best surviving elements that are available. But I'm just fascinated what they found for Letty Linton. There's a feature-length documentary, Irving Thalberg, Prince of Hollywood. He was a big producer back in the day. Audio only Joan Crawford radio appearances from, oh goodness, from 1938, from actually three from 1938, one from and two from 1939. So that's great archival stuff there. There's one movie we did skip over, Rosemary. This movie is even um, kind of tougher to find than Letty Linton was, coincidentally. It's resounding with songs such as Rosemary, I Love You, Song of the Mounties, and the beloved Indian Love Call. Rosemary immortalized Hollywood's greatest singing team, the 1936 screen version of the Rudolph Freemy Herbert Stothard Broadway hit. That's a mouthful to say. Is set in the breathtaking wilderness of the Canadian Rockies. Marie DeFleur, a glamorous Canadian prima donna, is renowned for her beauty, exquisite voice, and fierce temperament. When news arrives that her brother Jack, one of is in one of his, which is portrayed by Jamie Stewart in one of his earliest roles, has been wounded in a prison escape, Marie realizes she must go to him despite the danger. Lured into the wilderness, she encounters the handsome Sergeant Bruce, who is hunting the fugitive. Sergeant Bruce is soon hot on Marie's trail as well. The New York Times called Rosemary a blithely melodious film rich in scene beauty, and after all these years, the rugged romance is as wonderful as ever. So we've got a movie here which takes this um, prima donna, talented singer, brings her essentially into the middle of nowhere wilderness to basically track down her fugitive on the run brother, portrayed by Jimmy Stewart. But along the way, there's this sergeant also after Jimmy Stewart. They actually, her and the sergeant strike up a romance, and you can kind of guess what happens from there. But there's a new 4K restoration from the Best Preservation Elements at MGM Short, Hollywood, The Second Step, MGM Cartoon, Little Cheeser, as well as some audio-only radio shows from 1947, 1945, 1946, 1948, and 1937. Radio was all the rage back in the 1930s. Before television, if you had a radio, that was your main form of entertainment at home. It's interesting how radio is not really a thing quite anymore. We have podcasts, and we have satellite radio, but we also have streaming music, which I guess is where people like Spotify, Apple Music, and etc., Pandora, etc. Radio is not really a big thing anymore. I guess I and other people have replaced radio for people to listen to on their morning commute to work. So hello, everyone listening on their morning commute to work. Welcome to Chasing Labels. But that is it, pretty much.
Here, independent radio is still a thing. So we've got some independent radio stations going strong that have very dedicated followings, which is great because they play new music and they even have movie shows and all kinds of things. So
that's so cool. We still have radio stations here. I feel like they're just not as popular as they used to be, let's say, 80s and 90s. And I feel like people's selection of music, people prefer to listen to what they want to listen to, so they'll go to the streaming and whatnot. I've always secretly wanted to have a pirate radio station and just make my own radio talk show.
Volume.
Yeah, I'm thinking of literally Pump Up the Volume. I want to be Christian Slater and Pump Up the Volume.
Who doesn't?
In a way, I guess Chasing Labels has become my version of Pump Up the Volume. But granted,
You're
it's
gonna
only,
have to raise the level to 11.
yeah. Talk about, yeah. I
The
coincidentally,
antics.
oh yeah, coincidentally, I've got Spinal Tap next to me as well. Um, yeah, dial it all up to 11. Oh, yeah, Christian Slater, and what a phenomenon he was in the 80s and 90s. People had to kind of be around for Christian Slater. You mentioned Heathers
You,
earlier.
oh
Um,
yeah, if you talk about those Cinderella dreams being shattered, unfortunately, envisioned myself at a place in the future married to Christian Slater, but that didn't happen.
you and probably many, many others.
Oh
Ironically so.
yeah.
Ironically so. It's interesting. People kind of bemoaned Christian Slater that his career's kind of dissipated, but he's still regularly working to this day. So
Hmm.
he's regularly employed. It maybe not being like big time movies like he was back in the 90s, but you can still watch Christian Slater do his thing to this day. But speaking of doing something, let's see where we're going to go from here. So we just talked about that. There's only about 3 Kino titles that I wanted to mention, so I'll go do that really quickly. One is a box set of Italo Crime, which actually 2 of the movies are going to be released not only by Kino but also by Studio Canal. So it's kind of covering the same thing there. But I do have to go to Kino over on Facebook, so I will go over to Facebook and go to Kino and let's see, Kino Lorber Studio Classics. Coincidentally, they announced a few things recently, but I figured we would just stick with what I originally was going to talk about. Ironically, the Island is one of the ones I want to talk about. So we'll start with The Island, and this is a movie by Michael Caine. Now, if you ever wanted to know how to solve if you ever wanted to see Michael Caine try to investigate and solve the mysteries behind the Bermuda Triangle, I have a movie for you. It's called The Island. and and in this movie, Michael Caine is an investigative reporter who used to be in the Navy. So it kind of goes hand in hand, I guess. And what is happening is around that area of the world where Bermuda is, the Caribbean is, there's always been the Bermuda Triangle where ships for like centuries now have gone missing and there's all kind of conspiracy theories behind it. So Michael Caine wants to go figure things out because I guess no one else has over this time. So he decides to take he and his young 12-year-old son, don't ask me why he's trying to bring him in and put him into danger. They go down to basically Florida and then decide to take a plane from Florida to the area where all these ships are going missing. Um, and he tries to figure out what's going on down there. I don't know if I should spoil it or not. It's kind of on the cover art here. Uh, there are 17th century pirates still living in the Caribbean, and they are commandeering ships. That's the mystery. That's
Sorry,
only the
Andrew.
first act.
I'll be back in 1 minute.
So sure, no problem.
Sorry,
I'll be I'll
I
be
can
here
hear my
talking about
phone go.
Michael Caine fighting pirates.
You talk about you just talk about that, and I'll be back. My phone's going off. Won't be a sec.
Okay. So Michael Caine and his son are in the Caribbean. They get captured by pirates, and kind of the plot ensues from there. It is kind of a ridiculous premise, and the movie is rather ridiculous. It picks up in the third act a little bit. It's it's a fascinating kind of story of what would happen if like this lost civilization never really assimilates into modern culture. And it's fascinating because we've heard stories about these people living on islands in, let's say, the South Pacific, or even in the Caribbean, or even in certain parts of the world that are untouched by outside society. They're just living there essentially in the past. And this movie kind of plays on those ideas, but in a rather kind of 80s exploitative way, in the 80s a ridiculous way. Michael Caine is fine in the movie. It's tough for me to picture Michael Caine in the 80s as like this swashbuckling hero type of character. That's more of like an early like Get Carter version of Michael Caine from back in like the late 60s, early 70s. But he's doing it. He's doing it in this film. So let's get into what the special features are and such on this on this edition, which I believe is a 4K edition. So yeah, it's a 4K and a Blu-ray coming out July 14th. We have The Island. Disc 1 is the 4K UHD disc, and brand new HDR Dolby Vision master from a 4K scan, the 35mm original camera negative. There's two audio commentaries. We have this first one is by action film historian Mike Leader. The second one is by Howard S. Berger. It's got 5.1 surround and lossless 2.0 audio. The second disc has the movie as well as the two commentaries, and that is it. Actually, yeah, no other special features. Okay. Usually the second disc, when it comes to Kino, which is a Blu-ray, will have like some extra features and whatnot. But in this case, there is nothing but these two commentaries on both discs. And let's see, and that is The Island. Cool cover art if you're into the pirate vibe. That's another thing we talked about earlier about certain genres of movies or certain uh, like things coming in and out of popularity. The pirate movie subgenre is something that comes along every couple of decades. Growing up in the 90s, pirates were big. I don't know if it was just because Steven Spielberg's Hook had just come out at the time or what the case may be, but pirates were big in the 90s. And then in the 2000s with the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, pirates were all the rage. Now I feel like pirates are on a downturn, uh, if you will. Who knows if they'll make a comeback, but I feel like perhaps they will. Uh, Moving on from there, so I didn't put Gregory Peck's MacArthur on the list, but just make people aware that this is the movie where Gregory Peck plays General Douglas MacArthur, who was a big-time United States general in World War II and the Korean War afterwards. He had a lot of friction between him and Harry Truman, and all kinds of stuff at that time. This movie has been released by a couple of times. I think it was released by Kino previously on Blu-ray, and I think other labels have put this out too. It's kind of like a standard historical piece with a strong performance by Gregory Peck. It's getting a 4K release, and then we have the Italo crime triple feature. Yeah, three collection. This 3-film collection includes let's see, The Counselor, which stars Martin Balsam and Thomas Milian, blast the opposition in this crime saga from director Alberto Di Martino, who directed the movie called The Antichrist. Now, it's not the one by Lars von Trier. Different movie. A different movie. When the godson of the San Francisco syndicate boss asks permission to leave the business, Don Antonio agrees, but reluctantly. Such behavior by either man violates the code and triggers a bloody mob war with their underboss Garofalo. So we've got mob fighting stuff in an Italian movie in the 70s. We've seen that before. The second movie is called Blazing Magnum. When his sister is poisoned at a party, hardened Canadian cop Tony Sata embarks on a violent investigation that turns into a shocking whirlpool of revenge and betrayal. Featuring one of the decade's greatest car chases and an arsenal of plot twists, this blend of fast-paced action film, tough and police procedural from director Alberto Di Martino. And then we have Weapons of Death, which is, it says, Leonard Mann's cop goes up against Henry Silva's death dealer in this blazing Italo crime gem. The action-packed thriller plunges the viewer into a Neapolitan cesspool of crime. That's a great descriptive term. As dogged Inspector Belli and his task force fight against Kingpin Salvatore Santoro, a stony-faced maniac who orchestrates a string of brutal robberies and insane car chases and massacres any cop, gangster, or innocent bystander who gets in his way. Directed by Mario Caiano, as a spin-off to Umberto Lenzi's aptly violent Naples. This special edition also includes Shadows in an Empty Room, the alternate cut of Blazing Magnum, originally released by the legendary American International Pictures, AIP, Roger Corman's company. All 3 films were released on standalone Blu-ray, so you can buy them together in the set, or you can buy them individually. Weapons of Death, as well as The Counselor, are coming out from Studio Canal. I put them on the notes list that I shared with Suzanne, but since we just talked about them now, I'll just make note that they're coming out from Studio Canal as well as Kino, just just for people to know. And then I think there was the movie IQ.
I have
I'm
to
such a
say,
sucker. I'm such a sucker for movies like this.
I
uh,
was going to say about the, sorry,
yeah, go on,
going
go on, go
back
on.
to the Italian ones, they're going to be great value. They're going to be violent, morally questionable, sexist, inappropriate,
Yeah,
packed full of fun. I've seen that Shadows in an Empty Room. It's super fun. Antichrist is another one I keep saying, one of my favorite horror films. I mean, there's a lot of them. That's definitely one. And we did a really great imprint cast episode all about the Antichrist because, of course, they did a release of it.
that's why I've
So
seen it. Yeah, that makes sense.
if you are finished listening here and you're looking for something to listen to, go over and listen to the Imprint Cast Antichrist episode because that was a real fun one and we get super deep into that film and it was a really fun discussion on a great Italian horror film. It's called an Exorcist ripoff, but it's not.
Mm,
It's its own film. So this set, if you're an exploitation fan, if you like Italian crime and police films, this is going to be really fun, like super fun.
yeah, what's interesting is I talked a little bit previous. I think I talked about it on previous episodes here on Chasing Labels. 1970s Italian cinema is fascinating to me because it's like I think it's called like the Years of Lead, where it's just like Italian police crime gangster movies were like all the rage in Italy at the time. And then you're right, they are dark, they're gritty, they're sexist, they're uncomfortable, they're they're wild essentially. I forgot. I think it's called like poliziottesco. I think that's the Italian terminology for it or for that genre. But yeah, they are really something else. And this is like a small taste of that. They mentioned Umberto Lenzi in here. Umberto Lenzi has
Mm,
a whole box set from Severin that's just all of those movies from that he did
yeah.
during that time. It's I forgot what I think it's called, like Hard Crimes or something, or Violent Streets. I think it's called Violent Streets. That's what it is. It's called. Um, yeah, it's really interesting stuff. Completely flipping the script as far as you could go is the movie IQ, which is a 1994 romantic comedy starring Tim Robbins and Meg Ryan. So completely erase your mind from 1970s gritty to 1990s light romance comedy, which is a period piece actually going back to the 1950s, starring Walter Matthau, Meg Ryan, Tim Robbins, Lou Jacoby, Gene Sachs, Tony Shalhoub was in it, Stephen Fry, Frank Whaley, Charles Durning. Some of these names may be familiar to some of you out there. Uh, but the premise of this movie is thus. So like I said, takes place in like mid 1950s. It's all fictional nonsense, really, where Tim Robbins is a mechanic who is interested in science. He's interested in science. Meg Ryan just happens to be the niece of Albert Einstein, portrayed by Walter Matthau, and she and her fiance, who's portrayed by Stephen Fry, they're having some car issues, and they just happen to go to the garage that Tim Robbins is working at, and Tim Robbins is immediately just head over heels in love with Meg Ryan's character. Just he sees her and he's just like, wow, this is like the most amazing person I've ever seen. So it's like love at first sight, and she ends up leaving like I don't know if it's like her wallet or pocketbook or sunglasses at the mechanic shop where he's working on her car, and he goes to deliver it back to her, and he opens the door. Who just so happens to be there? Her uncle Albert Einstein, and they end up becoming friends. So it's a little whimsy here, and not only are they becoming friends, but Albert Einstein doesn't like uh, Meg Ryan's fiance, portrayed by Stephen Fry. Doesn't like him, right? Much prefers Tim Robbins to date his niece. So he and a bunch of his old science friends all connive together along with Tim Robbins to uh to basically court Meg Ryan's character, to get her to fall in love with him, with Tim Robbins, by pretending that Tim Robbins is now like a mathematician science genius. So they're like feeding him like information and like helping him write science papers to essentially impress Meg Ryan's character. It's you can understand, you can read this like a book. Like it's so easy, so playful, so fun, and so charming. But I'm a sucker for these romance types of movies. I am a hapless romantic at heart, if you will. So I always end up liking these movies, and that's kind of what this is. Ironically, this came out in 1994, the same year that Tim Robbins would be in Shawshank Redemption. So he was doing complete opposite movies at that time. Uh, yeah. This movie has music by Jerry Goldsmith, of all people. Um, it's directed by Frank Schapisi, who directed Iceman, Roxanne, with Steve Martin, A Cry in the Dark, The Russian House, and Mr. Baseball. What an eclectic group of movies.
I
Um,
must say, I don't think this is for me. I'm
yeah,
going back to the violent Naples.
yeah.
But anyway,
Mhm,
um, I have to say though, the Fred Schapesi films, Roxanne, that's one of my favorite comedies.
mhm. Yeah.
So maybe this does have hope for me, considering Roxanne is one of my favorite comedies. I also really, really like Iceman as well.
Mhm. Yeah,
That's I've liked that
yeah, for those
since
of
I
you who don't
was
know the movie
quite young.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know the movie Roxanne, starring Steve Martin, it's the story of basically Cyrano de Bergerac with Steve Martin as Cyrano de Bergerac. It is very charming and very nice. I do like that movie as well. But that is it for Kino. So, like I said, there are only really three titles from Kino that I wanted to talk about. But moving on from there, let's go to the BFI because the BFI has two movies and they could not be also more opposite of one another. They're putting out an edition of Plan 9 from Outer Space, the Ed Wood film, as well as a movie called Pressure, which is a fascinating movie. So let me go over to see if I can find these. Oh, so I have Pressure up already, so we'll talk about that one first. So Pressure is a movie from 1976 by Horace Ove, and this is actually the first movie, I believe, like first feature film directed by a black man in British cinema history. I believe, at least that's what I read, and keep in mind that's 1976, so that is 50 years ago. Not a long amount of time, considering you may know people who are over 50 years old. Also, to put that into get some cultural context, Star Wars would come out 1977. So the year before Star Wars, 1976 is when this movie came out, and this is a fascinating culturally, I think, significant movie because it is dealing with something I think is incredibly prevalent to today. So this movie surrounds this character who is a first generation, I would say, yeah, he's first generation. So his parents are from Trinidad, which is down in the Caribbean, and they're part of the groups of people who have immigrated at that time or earlier on in that time from the Caribbean over to England, and they've had children here in England. So the main character of this movie is a first generation, and this movie delves into all kinds of layered themes of like racial prejudice, oppression, stereotypes, cultural cultural identity or lack of cultural identity, or all those kinds of stuff. It also deals with a lot of the racial issues of the time in England, and I would say probably around the world, really, and even to this day. Equal rights and all that kind of stuff. Living in being a minority within a white person's society and white people's society, all that stuff is, you can rip it from the headlines now. And this movie is really dealing with all of these things. And it's fascinating to look at how contemporary all of this stuff is, even from something as simple as this young man who I believe he's a teen. I think he's like a teenager, young adult type of area. He's just trying to get a job, and he can't even get a job because of the racial prejudice. And I'm not talking like high paying job. I'm talking like blue collar workman's type of job. Like he can't even get that because of the racial prejudice that's going on. And then he gets involved with a lot of the the radicalism that's going on in the society of that day, like black rights and black power and things like that. And his brother is actually involved in that. So he gets caught up in like all that movement too. So you see the extremes of all that's going on in his society. He's just a young person trying to live. He's being, torn in all kinds of different directions. And he's also like trying to explain to people that sometimes I was born here. Like, and people are like, oh, how long have you been in this country? And he's like, I was born here. And that's something that you even see to this day in the world in which we live in when we're talking about immigration and the diverseness in society. This is a fascinating, deeply layered movie. I was really taken with it, Suzanne. I just really taken with it.
I haven't seen it, but like you said, sounds really culturally significant, really topical, really contemporary in what it's talking about. And again, we're hearing voices of people that maybe we don't typically hear from, especially at this time. And like the other youth and coming of age movies we're talking about, it definitely highlights that anxiety about society and the future. So, yeah. So
Yeah,
it
it
looks
also I'll
phenomenal.
say I'll say it also highlights it from a different perspective, adding in the racial element, adding in the prejudice
Yeah.
element, the outsider element, if you will, or at least the perception of being an outsider. But like I said, a lot of people are born in a country, yet the people within it still view them as outsiders because of the prejudices and the stereotypes and things like that. Um, Really fascinating. It goes along. Steve McQueen, the director, did a couple of movies a few years ago that were similar to this, that explored that generation of people and their plight, essentially immigrating from the Caribbean over to the UK and what they had to deal with, and trying to um, conserve their culture as well, preserve their culture. I guess is a better term. Especially I think of a lot of things here in the United States, specifically around my own area, where being in the Northeast, being on the coast, a lot of people from Europe have immigrated here over the decades upon decades. I'm first generation. My parents were born in Portugal. I'm first generation. Me and my brother and my cousins were all born here. But there is a sense of community here that preserves a lot of the stuff from the original country. There's a lot when people kind of come over to here, at least back in the day or back in the decades, they would tend to stay together. They would tend to stay together in the same areas, do similar things, preserve the culture and all that kind of stuff. And then there's also this whole idea of assimilation, which is a whole other can of worms in society of people assimilating into other cultures, but also trying to preserve their own culture. So there's so much going on. Endlessly, we could talk about this stuff forever. Like I said, this is how I get sidetracked. But this movie is really, really great. There's nothing here about special features, at least from what I see so far. I tried to look to see if there was like a press release for this on Blu-ray.com, but there isn't. I think I would have to perhaps go over to their discussion board. Yeah, this is an old stuff from 2015. But yeah, so keep in mind this movie is coming out, and now let me go over to something completely different. Plan 9 from Outer Space, a movie with so much history attached to it. So this is coming out in September. This is getting a Blu-ray release from the BFI, and this is the infamous Plan 9 from Outer Space, the Ed Wood Jr. film. I think this is also coming with another one of his films too. It looks like Bride of the Monster as well, which I think came out around the same time or slightly earlier. Yeah, Bride of the Monster I've seen, and I've seen Plan 9 from Outer Space. I've seen both of these. But yeah, this is a notorious movie. It's considered like one of the worst movies ever made, and I'm watching it and I can understand why, but I'm also like, I've seen worse movies than this. I've seen movies that are
It's not that bad.
It's not.
It's so charming and
Yes.
fun, and it's ridiculous. Like there's some ridiculous moments in it, but it's just so like camp and iconic. It's iconic. Vampira is iconic.
Oh yeah.
The sets are iconic. The look of this film is iconic. It's not a bad looking film. And I mean, people talk about, the sets are these cardboard or sticks or whatever. That's what gives it its charm, basically. And it's one of those classic B movies, B horror movies / science fiction, of which there were many of these types of science fiction and horror movies from the 50s, and Ed Wood wanted to make his own, and that's fine. It's like a love letter to anyone that's wanted to make a film but doesn't really know how or have any money, made with no money. It's all
passion. It's all passion.
Yes.
And the passion's
we get
all
to
on
see
the screen.
Vampira. Yeah. It's Bela Lugosi's final film.
It is
as
indeed.
well. Sadly, he passed away, but it's actually just random footage that Ed Wood had taken of him inserted into the film, and then he kind of wrote a story around this to include it, and then we have just some other person holding a cape over their face pretending to be Bela Lugosi for the rest of the film. And I'd suggest to anyone that hasn't seen it, go and watch Tim Burton's Ed Wood biofilm with Johnny Depp from 1994, because it really it's such a loving look at Ed Wood and this film and all of his films, which if you maybe don't quite get it, that watching that film will be really entertaining, but also give you an insight and a bit of love, a love letter to these films, basically.
I completely agree. I think, to me, Ed Wood may be my favorite Tim Burton movie. And I know that's maybe a bit of a hot take, but it's kind of my favorite. I know people gravitate towards more of his popular stuff, but that movie is just, there's something extra charming about that movie. And it's so, like you just said, it gives you, obviously it's a fictionalized version of Ed Wood and the story and whatnot, but there's just something about that movie that I think is really special. And and like I said, going back to Plan 9 from Outer Space, I think, the negative reputation that the movie has is that it was made for nothing. You know what I mean? So therefore it looks cheap. The flying saucers look like paper, and they can tell that they have strings attached to them, and there's continuity errors, and there's all kinds of silly things like that. But from a modern perspective, like living in the modern world, and there's a lot of do-it-yourself filmmakers out there, people who are making short films on YouTube, making short stuff on TikTok or Instagram, kind of utilizing the same similar types of tactics, of similar types of strategies in order to
but with
make
much
these things.
greater access to technology.
Yeah.
So now we just have this like unprecedented access to technology where you can make a film at home or on your phone in 4K. Like, it's absolutely ridiculous. And then you consider the challenges that Ed Wood would have faced back then. So financing film was expensive. Developing film was expensive. You had to pay for every single print of a film, and there was notoriously like very few prints of his film because very few were made because they were not a success. But then I think they found their success on late night television.
Yeah.
So being played on television, they were sold to stations as these big packages of films, and people started to watch them on television and be quite captivated by them late at night. And
it's the best time to watch these types of movies is like late at night. I'm a night owl myself. If you notice that when I was messaging you, in preparation for Chasing Labels, it was always late at night, because that literally my day doesn't start until the sun goes down. I'm like a vampire, I guess. But watching there's something magical about watching movies super late at night, like past midnight, when no one's around and no one bothers you. There's not a sound going on in the house, no cars driving by, no nothing. When watching these movies at that time, it's a different experience. It really, really is. Um, and these what is also interesting about these Ed Wood, specifically Plan 9 from Outer Space, is they're made during the atomic age, the atomic sci-fi era of movies, atomic age sci-fi, which is something is a subgenre that I really really like. These 1950s uh, sci-fi movies that are kind of fascinating to me. You know, they're dealing with like we have the big time ones like Forbidden
Sorry,
Planet.
Andrew. Sorry. I'll be
Okay,
back in a minute.
no
I've
problem.
got there's
Got things to
someone at
do.
the door. There's someone at the door. I hope it's Christian Slater, but I don't think it is.
I'm
I'll
crossing my
be right.
fingers for you. Okay, but like I was saying, atomic age sci-fi, late 1950s, Plane 9 from Outer Space feels like that type of movie because it's but on a much lower scale. It feels like somebody who saw those movies really loved them and was so passionate about that wanted to make his own, but like we said, didn't have the money, didn't have the production means to do it, and decided to do it on his own. It would kind of be like somebody trying to do that today on like YouTube or something. So Plan 9 from Outer Space, you know, with the negative reputation that it has, it's nowhere near as bad as some movies that I've actually seen that actually have big time, well, relatively big time production values. You know what I mean? Um, our friend Tony here says, Plan 9 from our Plan 9 is pure genius. It's a crazy premise too. We didn't even get into the premise of it. Basically, aliens come down to Earth and enact their Plan 9. Their big plan is called Plan 9, and it is to resurrect the dead as these zombies to disrupt humanity so that humanity doesn't create this big like doomsday device that humanity is slowly developing, or rapidly developing I should say. So the aliens come down and basically try to disrupt humanity so that humanity doesn't, you know, create a doomsday weapon. Fascinating, fascinating. Um, Tony also says midnight movies are just the best, and they are. Midnight movies are a lot of fun. Uh, you know, they have midnight movie screenings in movie theaters all around. Rocky Horror Picture Show is one of the defining midnight movies of all time. It's been playing since the 70s. I think of also John Waters films. I think of Pink Flamingos, which predates Rocky Horror Picture Show as a midnight movie. You could even say The Room is a midnight movie if you so choose to. But um, it's yeah, the midnight movie magic is something so different. But yeah, Plan 9 from Outer Space, Edward Jr. Check out his work, but go into it with the context of when they're made, how low budgeted they are, how much passion there actually is in there. You know, some of the acting's not great and production's not great, but still, it's about the charm and the context of the time. But when it comes to things that we've been talking about here, let's see. Moving on from Plan 9 from Outer Space, moving on from the BFI, actually. We have Deaf Crocodile. Deaf Crocodile will be the next company we go to. Let's see here. Let me see if I got a tab up already for Deaf Crocodile. Um, Deaf Crocodile is actually, I think they're getting ready to start their next subscription service timeline. So let's see. Here's the counselor on 4K from Studio Canal, but we're going over to Deaf Crocodile. Let's move some tabs away so my computer doesn't blow up on us. Let's see. Yeah, let's go over Deaf Crocodile. So we have two movies from Deaf Crocodile. There's two releases that are upcoming. One is called Tomorrow. The other one is called Hoffmaniata. They're both deluxe editions. One of those bigger, you know, the big thick deluxe editions that I really like. I've got to get a few more of them that I had my eye on recently. Hair High is one of them, but this is Tomorrow, and this is an interesting movie. I'll just read the description here. 21-year-old Olivia Newton-John stars pre-Grease fame in this utterly bonkers mod pop / sci-fi musical about a multiracial group of London art college musicians whose songs are the cure to the computer sterility suffered by the alien Alphoids. Circling Earth in their crystal spacecraft, this gets trippy. This gets trippy. It's the only thing planet Earth can teach us. The vibrations of youth, as the androgynous Alphoids, led by veteran British actor Roy Dotrice, tells Olivia and Band, a yeah, tell Olivia and Band, okay, a jaw-dropping, must-be-seen to be believed combination of Josie and the Pussycats and The Man Who Fell to Earth. A little more Josie and the Pussycats, way less Man Who Fell to Earth. That's the Nicholas Rogue film with, that's excellent. That movie is excellent with David Bowie as an alien. Yeah, this movie's way more Josie and the Pussycats than anything, and it's a movie that is uh, a fascinating musical, a fascinating musical. So, let's see. Where was I? Oh, Suzanne, you're back. So we are. Let's see. What was that? Oh yeah, Josie. The film is filled with super groovy sunshine pop tunes, student protest, and carefree sexual hijinks, plus aliens. The Alphoid's glimmering ship is like Superman's Fortress of Solitude on ecstasy, one of the film's highlights. Directed and written by the great British filmmaker Val Guest, who did the first two Quartermaster films, The Day the Earth Caught Fire, in his most pop-friendly Casino Royale style. Tomorrow was produced by James Bond 007 co-producer Harry Saltzman and veteran American music impresario Don Kirshner, who were intent on creating another the Archie slash the Monkey style sensation. Interesting. So this movie is a fascinating 70s psychedelic poppy musical film where these aliens want this band to perform for them. So Suzanne, you're back. I'm talking about Tomorrow over at Deaf Crocodile, directed by Val Guest. And
such an
yeah,
interesting label, Deaf Crocodile.
yes,
I love what they do. It's all so unexpected. Every announcement is just full of unique and unexpected films. It's like an adventure.
very much so. Like this is kind of their most. I mean, they do actually put a lot of out there types of movies. But this movie for me is so interesting because I didn't expect it from them at all. I don't expect any of their releases, to be honest. They have the most interesting catalog that they're pulling movies from that I've ever seen. I think recently, did you see one of the DEFA like fairy tale adaptations?
Oh, I love that box.
Yes,
Yes. So I just received it, maybe less than a week ago. I've watched Snow White.
nice.
Um, but I adore those European fairy tale films like The Singing Ringing Tree, Donkey Skin, and that DEFA box is all those kinds of films. So I get so excited when I see their announcements. I love all the Soviet film, the Soviet fantasy and folk stuff. Yeah, amazingly interesting label, and that's what I like from labels. I mean, you need your staple films, your classic films, of course, but then this is really pushing boundaries and bringing us things we haven't seen and maybe haven't had access to. So I really admire that about this label. And of course, in this film we have an Australian star, Olivia
Yes.
Newton-John, and I think unless you were around at that time, I mean, I wasn't, so this includes me as well. People actually underestimate what a huge star Olivia Newton-John was. And I think also, particularly in the United States, she was really, really big. Like her very sweet, girlish, saccharine kind of albums were immensely popular. She was an immensely popular singer and a big talent as well. So yeah, I think that's just something people miss now, that she was a really huge star. And even when I've been in America and people realize I'm Australian, older people would always bring up, oh, Olivia Newton-John.
Yeah.
So she's one of those people that's just quintessentially related to Australia when you go to America.
Oh yeah, I agree that entirely. I because Grease is such a big, massive hit. I mean, even to this day, there's been Broadway musical of Grease. They've done they did a Grease too. Um, uh, but yeah, Olivia Newton-John. I think everybody remembers her from Grease, even though she had a
And
career beforehand and afterward.
yes,
I believe she was in Xanadu as well.
yes, Xanadu,
Oh,
and
what a
people
movie!
people love that. That's a real 70s.
The music in that movie is incredible.
Yeah.
Absolutely incredible. But I do totally agree with you on Deaf Crocodile. Um, there's a lot of deep, deep catalog stuff in like Soviet Union. Uh, when the Soviet Union existed, and all kinds of uh, like animation of stuff you've never even heard. Like I have the stop motion animation movie, The Pied Piper, that they did, which is
Yeah.
incredible. I recently
Right.
got
I
that.
have almost everything they've released.
Oh
I'm
wow!
really onto this label ever since they kind of kicked off with the Soviet films.
Nice. I still have my box of stuff I got from their sale from a couple of weeks ago. Um, right up top.
Unfortunately, I can't remember if they didn't ship to Australia. At one point, maybe they didn't, but the shipping is so expensive.
Mm,
So
yeah.
I was having to get them through Diabolic. And now, luckily, there is a retailer in Australia who does seem to be stocking them. That is incredible. That Hungarian film,
Hmm.
absolutely, breathtaking film. Like
Yeah.
science fiction, existential. Um,
You're reading. Yeah, that's all my favorite things.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm just pulling
that's
out some
the
of these out of the
king.
box
Yeah,
right now. I have to eventually take them out of this box and put them on a shelf. There's one step closer.
that's
The
where they
Golden Throne,
belong.
another one I got.
Oh, that is that's phenomenal as well. So these
Then,
phenomenal titles that, I don't know, there's a thread through them. They're folk, they're whimsical, they're enchanting,
they're kind of indescribable.
magical. Yes,
Yeah.
they're magical. It's like everything they release is magical. It's got a bit of magic to it.
Yeah, and I got this film here, Trapped Ashes, and the reason why is because it's an anthology film with Joe Dante, Ken Russell, Sean Cunningham, Monty Hellman, and John Gaeta, and most of those names I know very well.
I
But
haven't picked that up yet, but I will.
yeah, I just for the names alone, I didn't know anything about it. This is definitely a blind buy for me. I just picked it up just because the names alone. But yeah, with Deaf Crocodile releases, because we've been following them pretty much since they started. And I noticed right away their movies were really tough to find to watch online. Like you couldn't find them; they weren't really streaming anywhere, and and it was really tough for a long time. Now more streaming places have picked them up and whatnot, and they're more
And
readily available
I
than
have to
before.
mention, we get far less films
Hmm.
available to stream in Australia than you do.
Ah,
So
yeah.
even big films like The Hotspot, that's not available to stream here,
Oh,
as far as I know, on any of the kind of big platforms. That has not been available to stream here, I think, since 2017. So
that's a long
Australia, you
time.
can't even watch big films here on streaming often.
I've always wondered that. I mean, this is a little aside here. Please excuse me for those listening, but I've always wondered because streaming rights is a relatively whole new ball game internationally. We talk about typically here we talk about physical media, so we talk about like distribution rights on a physical media scale. Most of the things we talk about are region A or region free. Some are region B. Um, and different companies in different areas have the rights. Like, for example, in Australia, a lot of the movies that Imprint puts out here in the U.S., Kino and other companies will put them out, or in Australia, Umbrella will put out some, and then here some other companies will put out some, and then the UK something different. It's very interesting how those rights go, but then streaming rights are a whole other ball game. Is a whole other ball game because not every country has access to the same streaming services as well. And if they do have some of the access, oftentimes the movies are different because
It's all
of
different.
rights. Yeah, because
All
of rights.
different. Yeah, and I think Australia really, they leave a lot to be desired, which is why obviously I collect Blu-rays and DVDs and whatever, just to if I want to watch something, I want to watch it. I don't want to stuff around. I don't want to surf streaming looking for something to watch and waste time doing that. You just want to go to, what you want. And yeah, we just don't have access. They don't have old films. They've hardly even got any
That's
films
the tougher
from
part.
the
Older
70s,
classic
let
films,
alone.
to find older classic films on streaming, they've done a lot of a better job over the last few years, at least here. The Criterion Channel is something that's like I make it indelible here in terms of older movies. Turner Classic Movies has their own like on-demand service. What they show on their television channel will then go up on their typically on their on-demand service.
So we
Um,
don't have that here
yeah,
anymore. We don't have TCM. I don't know. There has to be someone in the comments, like Film Nut Tony or someone that can talk about streaming. But basically, we can't get the Criterion channel here or any of those channels without a VPN. It's not
yes,
it's
yes,
not a thing because, like you said, the rights are different in different places. So, and it's sad, but I have to say, here in Australia, we do have some really amazing free streaming platforms. So, namely, which one that I go on about all the time, SBS on demand, which is there's ABC and SBS, which are like our public broadcasters, a bit like BBC is in England. I don't know if you guys have anything similar, but they're public broadcasters, and SBS is the kind of world, like multicultural world channel typically. And they have a streaming platform that is free and has all kinds of really interesting films on it, art films, foreign films. They do like old films, new films, from all different countries. So that is a blessing. And I see as well sometimes things that are announced on Imprint will pop up on some of these public broadcaster streaming services as well. Umbrella also has their own streaming channel, which is free, and there's lots of classic Australian television on there, some really cool TV shows that you wouldn't be able to really see otherwise. They've got movies and like a lot of things, basically things from their catalogue, a lot of Australian films. So yeah, I mean, they're great, but overall you get Netflix or whatever here and it's pretty poor.
gotcha.
Basically, it's just their content basically and a few other things that cycle in and out.
Yeah, that's that. Yeah, I mean, we could go on and on about streaming versus physical forever. Who knows? It's interesting. Yeah, it's endlessly fascinating to me about just the way in which the world is, and the way in which the world consumes entertainment has changed so vastly over the last several years that you can write entire documentaries about it. It really really is. But there are some comments here. I think Paul mentioned their release of The Devil's Bride was so good. I think he's talking about Deaf Crocodile.
Yes, that is that one. That's incredible. That's the Lithuanian musical, and it's like a folk. Is it Lithuanian or Latvian? I'm sorry. I'm
That's okay.
sorry.
Maybe I'm
It's
actually on their website now. I could probably look it up. Coincidentally, to be honest, yeah, who's putting? And I say this all the time from a lot of these boutique labels. Not a lot of people are putting out Lithuanian or Latvian films. Um,
well, yeah, all of these former Soviet countries, because even the DEFA fairy tale box set, that's East German. They were like an East
yeah,
German production company. So all this stuff that was pretty inaccessible to the West, and we did get quite a bit of Soviet animation at one point, but it was always dubbed
yeah.
into English.
I
Um,
was actually gonna ask you, what is your opinion about dubbed versus subtitles? I always go
well,
subtitles for me.
yeah, I always go subtitles. I like to hear the original language because I think it gives it expression, even if the language wasn't necessarily recorded live, but um, yeah, I think an Italian film, you get that certain expressiveness. Same with the French, whatever. It gives that to it. So I do prefer that. And in the past, everyone knows a lot of the dubs were very poorly
Oh
done.
yeah,
They were very poor translations, if barely a translation at all in some cases.
in some cases
So
it's completely different lines. Completely.
yes, yeah, absolutely. One of the worst examples of that I think I saw was a DVD release of Virgin Among the Living Dead, which is a horror film that I really love. And I had originally seen it in French. I think it was in French. And then, so I kind of had an idea of what they were saying. And then I saw, when I bought it on DVD, I saw an English dub of it. And there was a really long monologue. And the overdub just said, yeah, that's all right.
Hey, you want
So
it? Yeah, you know what I've also learned recently, not to, I guess, put too much anxiety out there. Sometimes subtitles can be poorly done as well, where the company that, whatever the boutique, really, not boutique, but whatever studio puts out the DVD, the Blu-ray, 4K, whatever company they hire to do the subtitles. Sometimes the subtitles aren't good. Sometimes they only have access to like old subtitles which were done really poorly and stuff like that, or are vastly incorrect. I didn't know that that could be a thing until over the last couple of years, just doing chasing labels and stuff like that. That sometimes when you see new and improved subtitles as a special feature, sometimes the subtitles are brand new and are indeed improved from the old ones.
that's always a bonus when it's done. And an interesting thing as well is that I talked about that public broadcaster here, SBS, which was the multicultural channel. They did all their own subtitles when they showed films
Oh, that's cool.
here. So basically, they would get a film from Japan or Korea or France or Italy, and here in Australia, someone at that company, I don't know exactly how it worked, but they did their own subtitles, and their subtitles were really, really, really good. They're amazing, to the point where I have watched things on disc at a later date, and the subtitling is not as good. So
Oh,
yeah, that was a really amazing thing that they did. I'm pretty sure they wouldn't do it anymore. I could be wrong. This was in the good days when everyone had a job.
mm, yeah,
And like, they didn't, it wasn't just AI titling and captioning and all that stuff. But anyway, going back to Deaf Crocodile, like their releases are just amazing. They're
yeah.
beautiful. Yeah. So
And you were right. The Devil's Bride is a Lithuanian film from 1974. Uh,
it's fantastic. It's so much fun. It's colourful. It's a folk tale. It's kind of madcapped, and but also a musical. I
oh,
It's
on top of everything.
wildly enjoyable. So yeah.
Yeah, let me go. Speaking of which, let me go back to speaking of musicals. Let me go back to Tomorrow
Okay.
and get the special features for this release. So, archival video interview with director slash writer Val Guest, conducted by the Guardian newspaper in 1998. That's an hour long. Wow. The Nose Has It, delightful World War II propaganda short about the danger of spreading germs, directed by young Val Guest and starring comedian Arthur Askey. If I Could Turn You On from 1969, 13-minute, directed by Bernard Coyne. Stark experimental film documenting an avant garde performance at the Camden Roundhouse, one of the locations used in Tomorrow. And then we have a new audio commentary by author and music historian Andrew Sandoval. And then Tomorrow Musical Humanism Through the Stars, new visual essay by film critic Celeste Lacabra, our friend Celeste. Yes, this is one of hers. Her visual essays. New visual essay by someone's favorite productions featuring a 1988 audio interview for British Entertainment History Project with director Val Guest, discussing the work on Tomorrow, moderated by Roy Fowler. Blu-ray authoring by Vital Passenger and new art by Beth Morris. The deluxe edition, which is the way I like to collect these bad boys, hard slipcase featuring new artwork by Beth Morris, 60-page illustrated booklet, transcript of 2002 Q&A with Val Guest at the American Cinematheque, conducted by Dennis Bartok. Dennis Bartok, runs Deaf Crocodile. New essay on Val Guest and Yolande Donlan by Deaf Crocodile's Dennis Bartok. New essay by film critic Walter Chaw, limited to 1,250 units. Okay, now let's go over to the next release that they're going to be doing, and this is completely different. This is called Hoffmaniata, which is a stop motion animation film with puppets. Uh, yeah, it's something to experience. Um, Oh boy. So came out in 2018. I'm going to butcher this. Soizu Multfilm, 78 minutes long, one of the most luminously beautiful and richly detailed stop motion features in recent memory. Russian director Stanislav Sokolov's masterwork finally arrives in North America. Adapted from the writings of famed Gothic fantasy author E.T.A. Hoffman, best known for The Nutcracker and Mouse King, Hoffmaniata is a visually stunning cross between Henry Selick's circa James and the Giant Peach and The Nightmare Before Christmas and Mozart's The Magic Flute. Filled with operatic dreams, clockwork automatons, fire salamanders, witchcraft, love, magic, and the legendary city of Atlantis, interweaving plots from three Hoffman stories, The Sandman, The Golden Pot, and Little Zach's Called Cinnabar. With real life drudgery of the writer's job as a government clerk, the film utilizes over 150 stop motion puppets and was the first feature project in decades from legendary animation studios Soyuz Multfilm, who did the Snow Queen. Snow Queen, if that's the movie I'm thinking of, is excellent. Featuring the voices of people whose names I can't pronounce. Vladimir Koshboy, Slava Polunin, Natalia Fissin, and Anvar Libabov. Maybe the most ambitious stop motion film ever made in Russia. The puppets and animation in Hoffmania are breathtaking, and that's from Animation Obsessive. The movie's in Russian with English subtitles, but it's more of a visual treat of a movie. It really, really is. Um, it's this movie is tough to describe without you just experiencing it for yourself. If you're a fan of stop motion animation, this is something I would definitely recommend for people. Um, Suzanne, how do you feel about stop motion animation, just in general?
Oh, it's amazing. It
Mm,
blows my mind how people do it.
I
Just the
don't have the
work
patience.
and I know I was going to say the work and patience involved is just incredible, and the skill and attention to detail and craft that it takes to make these, and just the time and this meticulous, it's so meticulous, it's amazing. So it's definitely something to be quite in awe of and appreciated when people make these very, or any kind of, you know, stop motion animation like this. So, and this looks really fantastical and magical again.
Yeah, very much so, and it's so surreal as well. It's utilizing surrealism and puppetry work, stop motion animation. It's like folktale, dreamlike, ethereal type of atmosphere, and it's like these meshing of these three stories, um, like a fantasy world as well. It's something truly unique. But let me get into the special features. A black and white film. Let's see. That's Sokolov's early stop motion gem follows a man who drifts away from his own party and into memories of his childhood days. That's from 1984. Hoffmaniata Frame by Frame from 2018, directed by Kevin McNear, a fascinating behind the scenes documentary on the making of Hoffmaniata. Not Only Human, new visual essay by animation historian John Atkins of Animation Obsessive, and it says new commentary track by animation producer and podcaster Adam Rakoff, podcaster and film expert James Hancock, and filmmaker and podcaster Martin Kessler. Original trailer, new video conversation with acclaimed British stop motion animator Barry J.C. Purves and Deaf Crocodile's Dennis Bartok discussing Hoffmaniata. Purves' own career, Ray Harryhausen and King Kong. Um, that's an interesting tack there at the end. That's 40 minutes long. Then you get like the hard case, the 60-page book. There's a written interview with the director. There's a new essay by animation historian, let's see, Maria Terashenko. New essay by documentary and film critic Kevin McNair. New essay by film critic Walter Shaw, limited to 1,250 units as well. So from Deaf Crocodile, I think these are coming out relatively soon. I didn't even look at the dates on them. It just
I might
says,
mention as well,
yes, go on.
these, I mean, the special editions are really wonderful, but if they're like if you're not willing to take the risk for a blind buy on something a bit expensive, they do always release a standard edition as well.
They do.
So don't fear. You can see these wonderful films on the standard edition too. So I like that you've got a choice as well.
Yeah. Yeah. If you don't want to shell out, the more expensive price, you can always wait for them to go for a standard edition to show up. And it looks like this one is coming out in late June. And I want to say Tomorrow's probably around the same time in late June
They
as
seem to
well.
sell out quite quickly now too.
They
I
do.
think some of their special editions.
That was my strategy during their sale that they had. I was looking at ones that were getting lower and lower in numbers. Because sometimes when the stock is running out, there'll be like 25 left, 30 left, or something like that. So I was like, oh, I better get those now before they go. That's usually my strategy. I have terrible indifference when it comes to collecting. When the limited editions, I always wait until like the things are starting to run out, then I panic buy. Like that's what gets me to finally do it. It's a bad habit. It really is. Yeah, a lot of people like to pre-order things. I guess I may have a fear of commitment. I don't know what that says about me, but I don't like to pre-order things for the most part. And then sometimes I do miss out on some things. I will say I do. I do end up having buyer's regret at some point. But for the next thing we're going to be talking about is Murders in the Rue Morgue from Hammer.
Let's do that one.
Yes, that's a good place to go. There are because what is interesting is when I was doing my research or when I was just adding it to my watch list on Letterboxd, I had seen Murders in the Rue Morgue, but I saw the one from the 30s, and I didn't realize this is the Hammer one from the 70s.
1971. Yes.
Now you've seen this movie, so I'll let you discuss your thoughts on it.
So it's an AIP production. It's one of the Edgar Allan Poe adaptations. There were some other ones like Cry of the Banshee and The Oblong Box. It's directed by Gordon Hessler, and he is responsible for the incredible contribution to humanity, which is Shokasugi's Pray for Death and Rage of Honor, films that I really love. That's something totally different. But there you go. He directed Scream and Scream Again. He also did the Poe adaptation, Cry of the Banshee. He also directed The Voyage of Sinbad, which is a very beautiful film. Yes. So I've seen this a few times, but I haven't seen it for a very long time. and I watched it again just to refresh for this podcast, and I forgot how beautiful this film is. It is so colourful, in the vein, I guess, of those Hammer period pieces. It is a period piece. It's very colourful, lots of extras, amazing costumes. It's gaudy. It's one of those gaudy gothics, and it's got these big crowd scenes that actually look like Toulouse-Lautrec paintings. So he was a very famous French painter, and he painted dance halls and dancers and can dancers and the cafe scene and people in bars, and a lot of the crowd scenes in this look like his work. The women with heavy makeup and big hats, and these places of revelry and partying. It's interesting as well that it's actually a gothic picture, so in the vein of these kind of gothic pictures, Hammer Poe adaptations, but it's set in Belle Epoque France, which is a different setting for, say, these films that we typically see as an American Gothic or the very typical English Gothic in old houses and castles, etc. And I just love this backdrop, which, again, Toulouse-Lautrec, he was part of the Belle Epoque. So I think that there's really nice art direction and kind of attention to detail put into this film, given the era and the setting, and it gives it a different feel and a very exciting feel, something quite fresh. And if you look in the background, this film is actually full of art from this era and from previous eras. Like, you see Alphonse Mucha posters in the background. So it's built this whole world, and that's what I really love about this film. I think it really sets it apart. It is set in this theatre, the Rue Morgue, which is like the Grand Guignol Theatre, which they played horrific plays, kind of these pantomime style horrors for audiences that were thrilling and titillating and shocking. And we see a really good example of that in Interview with the Vampire, of course, with the Theatre de Vampires. So it's that kind of place. That's where this setting happens. It borrows a lot from Phantom of the Opera as well, which is quite obvious. Yeah, it's wonderful. And another thing that I think is really notable about this film, there's some really amazing dream sequences in slow motion, and they really are so beautiful, and they leap from the covers of Gothic romance novels that were around, say, in the 70s or 60s, 70s, 80s. They're quite in vogue now to look at these vintage Gothic covers from these novels of kind of women in nightgowns and flowing robes, running, paused as they're running through, old corridors and things. So we get that in this as well. So the visual aspect of this film is particularly rewarding and exciting, especially if you love Gothics and Hammer. And I watched an old DVD of this, and that looked incredible and colourful and wonderful. So I can only imagine how brilliant it's going to look in this 4K from the Hammer label.
Yeah, I was going to say, Hammer has been putting out some really nice editions over the last year or so, and I think they've continued that this year. We talked about them previously here on Chasing Labels. I like to point out their releases because they are pretty deluxe and pretty nice. I keep referencing Curse of Frankenstein. I still need to get that big collected edition of Curse of Frankenstein. I mentioned it last time. I'm mentioning it now just to remind myself that I need to get it. But this here, Murders in the Rue Morgue, yeah, this movie stars Jason Robards and Herbert Lom. Yeah, and everything Suzanne just said is apropos. It's very stylistic in the time in which it depicts. It is based loose as you can get on the the Edgar Allan Poe story. Know what I'm thinking here. Um, and initially, I think Vincent Price almost played the Jason Robards character, which I thought would have probably dialed this movie up to a whole new level. I'm a big Vincent Price fan, and his work with AIP and the Edgar Allan Poe adaptations in the '60s are just excellent. The Mask of the Red Death and The Raven and other movies like that, I think are just fantastic. Jason Robards is an interesting choice in this movie. I don't know if a lot of people know Jason Robards. He had a long career of playing these antagonistic roles, of which he is in this movie as well. He just has that you just love to hate his characters in movies. And like he's got that vibe to him. He's just so nasty. Herbert Lom is in this film as this essentially the Phantom from Phantom of the Opera. Herbert Lom I know from the Pink Panther movies. He was in those films as like Chief Inspector Clouseau's yeah, his boss basically, and Peter Sellers' character just drove him absolutely crazy in those movies. I remember him from that. But this film is interesting, taking the elements from the Phantom of the Opera and incorporating it in here, but doing it on with a Hammer vibe because it hammers. For those of you who don't know, Hammer introduces elements that are so unique to Hammer horror. They have an edge to them that you don't see with a lot of horror films of their time. And Hammer had been making horror films uh, by this point from the 50s, I would say, from the 50s all the way up into through this point as well. Um, yeah, and Murders in the Rue Morgue. There's a nastiness to this movie that I think is so unique for its time. But for special features here, we have two cuts of the film: Hessler's original nonlinear director's cut and the AIP theatrical cut. There's a new commentary with filmmaker and former Fangoria editor-in-chief Chris Alexander, stage tricks and screen fights, an archive interview with director Gordon Hessler, and more. So there's more to it than that. But this is coming out, it just says this summer. So it could be June, it could
I'm
be August.
intrigued. I'm
Yeah.
intrigued by these different cuts. I don't know which one I have seen.
I don't know
I
which one I
think I've
saw either.
maybe I think I've maybe seen the non-linear because it had lots of dream sequences and flashbacks.
Yeah.
So I presume that that is that one, and that's what I actually liked about the film. I love all the story building through these dream sequences and flashbacks, and it's not frustrating or anything like some films can be when they kind of rely on that, but this, it's so atmospheric.
Yeah, no,
Christine Kaufman, the Madeline, the lead, the young lady, she is just looks like the perfect gothic heroine in this. Like I said, she looks like she's straight from the cover of a vintage novel. The costumes are really good, and I actually really love this artwork which they've got. It's
oh
like
yeah.
it's
The
incredible. It's fantastic. It's like an old school movie poster painting, and it's fabulous. So that's the old poster, which is meh.
what's
It
yeah.
doesn't really represent the film, like, you know. I don't think, but the new artwork is just fabulous. Which you had a little highlight of it back there. That
Yeah,
was just
let
a
me
snippet.
computer's running slow. Right here. When
Oh,
they have the trailer here for showing off the new
scroll
4K
down.
restoration.
Oh,
Oh, let me go down. Oh,
there we
there it
go.
is.
There it
Didn't scroll
is.
down
Yeah.
far enough. So you've
So I
got
mean
the
that looks like a Lucio Fulci
it
film or
does. I was
something.
gonna say the one on the left looks like a giallo. Uh
Yes.
and the one on the right looks like a period piece Hammer film.
Yeah.
Uh
And
yeah,
I do
completely
love
different
my
vibes.
period piece horror films, and this is a good one. It's a good one.
Yeah, I totally agree. So, moving on from there, we've got I think all we've got left is Cauldron Films, which I only got to watch one of those movies, so we'll probably go through them, and then Red Blood on Black Gloves, the Giallo trilogy. Speaking of Giallo, by the Onetti brothers, I only got to watch one of those two from Treasured Films. So we'll go through those, and that will be it for Chasing Labels number 191. I will be doing Criterion in a separate video later this week when I get around to watching the movies that I haven't seen from them. So let me see if I can go. Oh, here's the Cauldron Films. I'll do that really quickly. So
I can
speaking of,
talk about
yeah.
Conquest really quickly. I'll just say that's the one I've seen. And
Oh, okay.
I love this film. I love Conquest. I don't care what anyone says. But
Nice.
that is actually a Lucio Fulci film. Speaking of Lucio Fulci,
Mm,
I'm a huge fan of like sword and sorcery. So
okay.
this is he's like Italian, one of the Italian sword and sorcery dark fantasy films. People kind of give it mixed reviews. I really like it. I can pretty much sit through any sword and sorcery film like this. It's lots of fun. It's violent. It's got, people always talk about, it's got this really weird soft focus
Yes.
thing about it that looks like there's something smeared on the camera lens. So I think it's meant to look like into the distant past and
Uh,
smoky, smoky. It's
yeah.
like smoke rising from the earth and whatever. I don't mind it personally. People think it's distracting, but it'll be interesting to see how that looks in 4K,
Yeah.
because this was a notoriously bad looking film on DVD.
I feel like it's intentionally supposed to look that way, though, like you were just saying. Because
Yes.
so I've seen the movie, so I know exactly what you're talking about. It's all like almost fuzzy and out of focus, but intentionally so, because
Yeah.
it's this weird surreal fantasy world. It's like he took the concept of Conan the Barbarian and was like, what if I make it Italian and surreal and weird?
Yeah.
And that's what you get from this movie. That's kind of what I liked about it, because the sword and sorcery movies of the 80s, they kind of started copying each other. And I'm like, hopefully somebody would do it a little bit different. And you get this movie, and it is different.
Mm. And it's very like primeval and
Mm,
um it's got that aspect to it. The Italians did like a kind of, primeval feel to their dark fantasy and sword and sorcery. There was a whole lot of them. But yeah, this is a good one, and it's Fulci, so if you're a Fulci fan, you need this. And it's
yeah.
got gore in it. So if you like Fulci gore, it's got it. It's, yeah,
Yeah.
great Italian exploitation.
It even comes with the soundtrack as well, which is always kind of amazing.
Amazing. I love
By
that. I
Audio
love when a
Simonetti.
disc comes with it.
Yeah, this will be a nice addition to anybody's Fulci collection in there, which I actually have. I need some more Fulci, I should say. I have more Argento than I have Fulci, so I need to balance out my Italian horror directors in my collection. I got a better balance. I need Mario Bava. I need some Lamberto Bava. I gotta bolster that section. But we talked about Italian, uh, like the police and gangster films of the 1970s before, and this is another one of them called Emergency Squad, uh, a Eurocrime film, and this is an interesting movie because it's very much. It stars the same actor, Thomas Million, who was in The Counselor, and but in this version, he's not the gangster. He is a policeman who's out for revenge, essentially. What happened is, I'll read this here. Consumed with vengeance, Thomas Million sets out to take down the man who murdered his wife during a robbery. Meanwhile, the culprit, Marcellese himself, um, has one last big heist up his sleeve if he can stay ahead of the law and keep his own gang from mutiny. So what happens is this guy has this vengeance of finding the killer of his wife. Basically, there was this bank robbery that happened, and the people were in a car chase getting away. They were exchanging gunfire, and his wife was caught in the crosshairs. And this happened years ago, and he's harboring all of that, the trauma and the emotion of that loss. And it just so happens he's now on the case of someone he believes to be the person who orchestrated that initial event, and he's on the hunt for them, basically. And he's like this quiet, hardened, like Dirty Harry type of cop who's like doesn't play by the rules and things like that. There were a lot of those movies in the 70s of these just hardened cops who, you know, didn't play in the system and were out for doing whatever they wanted to do. So this is very much in that vein. I really liked it for that chilling nihilistic fashion of it, uh, characteristics of it, as well as those, you know, Polizioteca elements to the movie as well. Let's see the details. There's a Blu-ray. There's 2K restoration from the negative. 2.0 dual mono. There's an audio commentary by Eugenio Ercolani, Nathaniel Thompson, and Troy Hallworth. There's an interview with Sergio Rubini, interview with Danilo Massi, archival interview with Stelvio Massi, archival interview with Thomas Milian, archival archival Ray Lovelock interview, and then there's some bonuses. There's a trailer, and then there's Eurocrime, the Italian cop and gangster films that ruled the 70s. And I'm guessing that's a special feature that came out in 2012. And then there's a slipcover and booklet and stuff like that. Yeah, it came out in 1974. This is the only one of these films that I got to see, so I won't spend too much time on the rest of these. There's another one called Urban Warrior, which is part of their Cauldron Crypt line. So there's Cauldron, and now there's Cauldron Crypt, which is a little bit different, I guess. It's kind of the more off the beaten path, I would say. So I won't spend too much time, just in the interest of time here. As you can see, there's the details and whatnot. Yet again, I don't know much about the movie. Good heap of extras. Came out in 1987, the year of my birth. So you know it's at least worth a watch. And then the last one here from them is Supersonic Man, which I think is a lyric from a Queen song, if I do recall. This is a movie about an extraterrestrial sent to Earth to save it from the evil genius Dr. Gulick. This has 80s exploitation all over it. 1979, I was close. But yeah, so it's restored from a 2K scan of the interpositive. And it says, due to licensing restrictions, only the English language is allowed for the North American release. I never understand why some companies or some rights holders are so like beholden to the movie. It's like just license it out. You know, why are you holding on to it? Just license it out, regardless of which version it is. Like, if someone's going to pay you more money for a different language version of the movie, come on. But here's all the special features for this movie, Supersonic Man. Cool cover. It looks like a comic book in every sense of the word. But I think these are all coming in August. Sorry. My mind is not where it should be. So I think the only thing we have left is Treasured Films. I'll go over to Treasured Films website and let's see. Treasured Films. I'll Google them because I always forget. Oh, there they are. And let's see. Here we go. Red Blood on Black Gloves, which I think is just a cool name for a box set in general. The Giallo trilogy by the Onetti brothers, and this is a set of like modern Giallo films, which is interesting to me because when I think of Giallo, I think of the 1970s. I don't necessarily think of now. This is coming out in July, and we have 3 movies. It's Sono Profondo, the Redux edition from 2013, and then we've got Francesca, the director's cut from 2015, and then we've got Abracadabra, the director's cut from 2018, not the Lady Gaga song, a different Abracadabra. But the first movie is the only one I saw. Interesting concept of the movie. Not so much the execution I thought was that great. After murdering a woman, a killer that is traumatized from his childhood memories gets a mysterious envelope slipped under his door. The hunter becomes the prey when he finds out that the envelope contains photos that show him killing the young woman. A unique and experimental approach to the Giallo standard with its first-person killer perspective. Sono Profondo is as much mood piece and evocation of atmospheres surrounding the genre as much as it is an intoxicating narrative horror thriller, and is presented here in the Redux Director's Cut edition. So, this whole movie's told in first person, so you get the point of view perspective of this killer, of this Giallo killer. And the whole movie's told that way. You never see the killer. He never says anything. It's just him doing things. And then it starts to get weirder and weirder as the movie goes along, as he starts to have like these memories and these dreams and these nightmares. It gets very surreal, erratic, and all over the place, which is kind of cool. It is kind of up my alley, but that POV perspective threw me off a little bit to where I couldn't really get into it. Also, it is a much lower budgeted movie, and it's a modern giallo, which is interesting, which was interesting to me in general. But for special features, Blu-ray presentation from the 2K Master of the Redux version of the movie, PCM 2.0 audio, and then there's Deep Sleep Redux, the making of the movie, Sono Profondo backstage behind the scenes featurettes during the shooting of the film, Le Vortex Monoplaire, short film by the Onetti brothers, new We Belong Dead guide to Giallo. Writers of the acclaimed horror magazine We Belong Dead discuss their favorite Gialli and the associated tropes. Interesting. That may be more interesting than the actual movie, actually. Motion picture soundtrack CD, and then Francesca, the director's cut. I did not get to see, as well as Abracadabra. I don't. If anybody's interested, I would go on here and read those. But in the interest of time, I'll skip over those just to wrap things up here, because I think that is it. I'm looking at my list here, and that is all for Chasing Labels episode spy number 191. We made it under 4 hours. That's got to be some kind of a record. But I will do a little bit of my I will do a little bit of my outro. We will get going. We will get going. So, any comments here? Just one comment here is Paul decided to order the Hammer release. Good on you. That's awesome. And then, yeah. So, anything left that you want to say, Suzanne, before we get out of here?
No, but there's just so many announcements all the time.
This was actually a shorter week.
I know, it seemed like less than lots of other times, but I think that says something quite good about the state of physical media and film, that it can maintain this level of or quantity of releases, and people are buying them and really into them, and more people getting into them all the time and enjoying all these everything from classic films to weird and wonderful, obscure films. So there's really something for everyone out
Very
there.
true.
So
yeah, we ended up hitting, I think, an interesting unplanned theme with a lot of the films we talked about, with the cultural and thematic relevance, which is always something that's an added bonus here on Chasing Labels, that I never planned for any of that. It just ends up happening. I guess that's just the way movies go. But let me actually remove this so that we can get back into the two shot here. And then, so I'm glad. Thank you for joining us here on Chasing Labels.
Thank you for having me. It's
no problem.
First time on Chasing Labels, and the first time I've actually gone live on anything, because I'm usually undead.
Yeah. What is interesting is I never get used to doing this. I just do it and then I move on. It's just like sometimes it's nice to pretend that there's no one watching, then sometimes you like to pretend that there's everyone watching. I don't know. It's a mental gymnastics you have to play with these things. But for those of you who are fans here on Chasing Labels, thank you all for watching. Thank you all for listening. Thank you all for checking out, whether it's the live stream going on right now, or whether it's the replay going on later. Any little view helps. Any little support is always welcomed. Check out the other things we have going here on Chasing Labels. This coming weekend, we're doing another episode of the Unwatched Pile. Check out our previous episodes of the Unwatched Pile, as well as movies down memory lane. We recently talked about Blade Runner. Next, we'll be talking about the movie Hoop Dreams. And we have plenty of more other movies to talk about throughout our cinematic lives. And then, of course, check out the Criterion reviews that we just did for Sentimental Value, as well as Akira Kurosawa's Stray Dog. And yeah, check out all the other interviews we've done and all the other things that we've got going on here. Movie Mutations, our movie related game show, just wrapped up its first season. Check out the episodes of that. And yeah, hey, keep on watching those movies because I know I will.